Drew Rogers and Damon Benning.
3-1 pitch is hit high and deep. Left field. He got it. There's your home run. A big fly for Paul Goldschmidt. Number 19. And the Cardinals jump back out on top. And that was a no-doubter to left.
The 1-2. Drilled. Deep right field. Davis going back. Looks up. This one is gone. Jonathan Arauz trips one into the right field bullpen. A 2-run home run. And the Mets vault in front 5-2.
Marcus swings and hammers one down the left field line. If it's fair, it's gone. Hooking towards the pole. Out of here. A 3-run home run for Marcus Semien. The Rangers have opened this one wide open on Marcus's 19th blast of the year. It's 9-0.
Comes the pitch, and a high drive center field, well hit. Back goes Rodriguez to the track, to the wall, and gone. Salvador Perez. Royals lead 3-0.
Well, that's trying to be our brand of football. We talk about being RDV, relentless, disciplined, and violent, and we want to be violent on the perimeter, and we want to be violent when we catch the football. But the first one is violent on the perimeter, and so they saw those older guys. They saw Ty Hahn, Alex Bullock, Marcus Billy. They saw them on the perimeter kind of stick their face in it, and, it kind of showed them, hey, this is how we do things.
Welcome in to Coffee and Cream on a Tuesday morning. Ravi, Lulla here with you. Damon Benning.
So subdued.
I'm subdued.
Welcome in.
Do you want me to? How do you want me to do?
I don't know. I almost said it the same time you did.
We kind of looked at each other like, you, me, you,
hey,
you, me.
We locked eyes. I got the vibe. Zip it, DV. Nah, I'm just playing.
No, yeah, we're joining you here on a Tuesday. It's another great day.
Going up on a Tuesday.
We got the OG, Shane Schillerberg, over there.
What up, Shane? Live.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Okay. Yeah, we kind of got the feel this morning that Shane's a little squirrely.
You think so?
Yeah, he's kind of running it pretty good.
Okay.
Gonna have to put a muzzle on it.
Well, he's on some Red Bulls I saw, so that's always a dangerous combination.
Yeah, you got to get out of that glass house though, because I see a C4 over there.
Oh yeah, no.
Yeah. Best wishes with that bad boy.
Listen, I'm on these all the time. It's all good.
Man.
I don't know, a couple of weeks.
So I got off of those a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And on a humbug.
They make you like a little jittery?
Decided to grab one.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, they hit different. They really do. Because I'm not a man, that's a little bit of cap. Like I'm not what I would call like an energy drink guy. I'm kind of a healthier energy drink guy, like either a fit soda or a probiotic, like a pop soda, or my go-to are those amino energies.
Those are pretty solid.
Man, the green apple.
I need a little bit more pop than that.
This drink is on fire.
I need a little bit more pop than that.
Hey, would you lose your mind? Would you lose your mind if I could sing?
I mean, you're not as bad as I think you think you are.
It's pretty horrible. Like sometimes Shane will do like these renditions just to be funny. And he doesn't, not the ones that he plays over the air. Like he's got a lot in the can that he just doesn't lay out and waste me over. And I'm not
All we can control is what we can control.
Exactly, Marcus. And I can hear you just fine. Boy, the crybaby's talking about the audio, man. Move on.
Yeah.
I can't hear Marcus.
Listen,
Marcus ain't trying to be heard, man. I mean, camp is 16 days out. He's got a 24-year-old wide receiver coach. We need some bodies.
Yeah, they do need some bodies.
And we're mad about walk-ons again.
Big body, big target. Put it on them and let them roll.
Yeah,
Who's
put
mad
it on
about
them and let
walk-ons?
him roll, man. Rare combination of size and speed. Get it to Dawson in the open field, man. Let him roll.
Take it up a notch.
Yeah, kick it up a notch, Jeff.
Who's
really?
Who's mad about walk-ons?
Nobody.
You've been hanging out on message boards again?
Keith Sweat.
Well, you've been hanging out on the message boards again?
I peruse from time to time. I kind of just give likes.
Yeah.
I don't say a whole lot.
No, but you're kind of feeling out the vibe,
yeah,
right?
Do you know? But I realize that is really the non-vocal textual minority.
Yes, like that is a very that's a niche of a niche.
100%.
Like if Twitter's a niche, message boards are like a niche of a niche.
Are you cool with X?
I don't care.
Yeah. Do you like?
I mean,
do you want to go out or get them, boys?
Yeah, we gotta do a little.
Dun.
X gonna give it to you.
R.I.P.
Yeah, pour one out for our guy.
Yeah, yes, sir. It is not a stinking game.
As long as it works, I don't care what they call it. My issues are when it like glitches out and stuff, and then I have some problems. Glitches out.
Glitches out. Have you ever seen Wreck-It Ralph?
No, I don't watch cartoons.
That's right. I forgot. You're part of the No Fun Police.
It's not because I don't have fun. It's
do you want to borrow my kids?
No, I'm good. My wife,
tough hang.
My wife would. She likes hanging out with kids. She just likes giving them back.
Yeah,
like
that's cool. Maybe she can toughen Zoe up because
she met Zoe.
She seems like she's kind of no nonsense.
Oh yeah, because she met Zoe when we were watching the fight together.
Yeah.
So yeah, she thinks Zoe's like
cute
as a bean.
She woke up this morning, and it's something else.
Yeah,
got a lot of hair.
She on one today?
I called her the lioness, and I run her bathwater before I bounce.
Yeah,
because listen, these are the days, and I know what I signed up for, so I'm not playing the violin or the cello or whatever the stringed instruments are. Like, don't cry for me, Argentina. But I saw her for all of 6 minutes yesterday.
Yeah,
because I went right from West Side to go coach Micah.
Yeah,
and she obviously was at school. And she was trying her darndest to wait up for me, but I didn't roll in until like 8:40. They say
it's tough when they're this age too, because they go to bed so early.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So like you could get to home at a reasonable time. Like if you get to home at 8, you still only get like half hour with her, right?
Yeah.
And that's just part of that age, you know.
And
not that I know, but that's about the time that I try.
Well, you are the guy that said kids are a tough hang, so I don't know if you want to know.
No, so I don't want to know. But that's when I get to my brother's house about 8:30 because I know that's when the kids are going down. Yeah. So I don't have to like spend an inordinate amount of time with them.
Yeah, that's wild.
Well, no, it's like I see them for like 5 minutes. They're like, "Oh, Uncle Ravi's here." They like lose their minds. They're super happy. It's like, "All right, kids, peace."
We call that a tease. Shane, how's my camera angle? I need my man Thomas Frenchat to tell me. He usually always tells me how I look on camera, but the arm thing that's on here, I totally all the way hijack.
No, you look okay in the camera. I kind of want to do that to mine because I feel like it's always like in my face.
Yeah, see, I'm not that guy, right?
Yeah.
It's like back up off me.
Yours has a proper distance now.
Does it?
Also, anytime I move my hand now, it looks like I'm like face palming the camera because it's too close.
Talk to the hand. To the hand.
Yeah, I'm not trying to do like my 90s stuff.
Bernie Mac. She don't walk her little bow-legged ass down the stairs. What you doing? I'm gonna get him some milk and cookies. Nah, I probably can't even say that on air. Shane, can I do a Bernie Mac skit on air?
Right there.
You could maybe do from the Bernie Mac show. That was on network television, so you could probably get away with it.
Yeah.
Network television and radio rules are pretty similar.
I feel like we had to RIP a couple more guys. We got RIP Bernie Mac too.
Oh yeah, pour one out for Bernie Mac.
Yeah, man. Like
pour one out for my guy.
It's my
I pour it out, but I pour it in my mouth so we don't waste.
Just do it as a tribute. You'd be fine.
This goes out to my homies with that gangster lean. That was DRS. Do you remember them?
I don't remember DRS.
Yeah, you probably would have been in middle school.
What years are we talking?
I don't know. That's why we Google. If I was severe, I would say GRB. Gangster lean.
Yeah, I mean, the song sounds familiar, but I'm not.
This goes out to my homies. That was, oh, yeah. I mean, that was 1993. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's
my bad.
That's not middle school.
You're Jimmy the Sixer. You're like rolling over there to Pacific Heights or wherever it is. I just made that up. Like, what was your middle school or your elementary?
Montclair.
Is that still around?
Yeah. It's in my parents' neighborhood.
Montclair.
Yep.
Is it public or private?
Public.
Oh, okay.
It's I didn't go private school. Come on, man.
That's right.
Come on. What do I look like?
What you guys are trying to save money.
Well,
for a scholarship.
Well, listen, I mean, I don't know. It's Omaha's kind of one of the, I think, unique situations where, like, I feel like the public schools in Omaha, most of them at least.
Yeah. I used to date a girl named Unique.
Are on par with most of the private schools in the rest of the country.
Two strangest names of girls I've ever dated.
Unique and
Fatima.
Fatima. I've heard of Fatima before as a name.
She's an itty bitty little thing. Little cutie pie. I blame that one on Jerome Boone.
Come on, Jerome Boone. What are we doing here?
Him and Coach Crandall.
What are we doing here?
Yeah.
Giving you a hard time.
Can't go over there with those guys over in Country Club.
Yeah.
That was really far north when I was a kid. See,
Was it?
Yeah, because I lived off of Fort, and they were like.
Oh, you mean like Omaha Country Club?
Yeah.
Okay, because there's a neighborhood called Country Club, kind of over by Morton Meadows. That is not far north.
No, Morton Meadows. That's like Pacific area.
Yeah, it's just south of Dodge. But there's an area called Country Club.
No, this is Country Club.
You mean Omaha Country Club?
Correct.
That is way north. It's still way north.
Yeah. Well, I had another couple of buddies that lived in Raven Oaks.
Where's that one at?
Raven Oaks is north too. It's off of like 60th and North Freeway.
Okay.
So
that's not a part of town.
I had a couple guys in Ponca. No, it's good.
I've been around Ponca.
That's where all the Northwest guys went.
Was Raven Oaks?
Yeah, like they were on that side of town, like north of Crown Point.
So
there didn't used to be much over there.
Yeah, no, I'm familiar with Ponca. I've been over in Ponca a little bit.
Yeah, used to go to the Hurrdat store.
But I think like Raven Oaks is like a little west of Ponca, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So I wasn't in Raven Oaks a ton.
Correct.
Yeah, Ponca's a nice place, though. Nice neighborhood.
Yeah, I saw. So I took Zoe with me about. This is still when I was paying for food out. So we went to Alpine Inn.
Oh yeah.
And there were a couple of deers.
Yeah.
Doe, a deer, a female deer. Ray, a golden drop of sun.
Did you watch like America's Got Talent or something last night? You're rocking the songs.
No,
morning.
But so on the way home from practice last night and last night before I went to bed, I was on Spotify.
Oh, okay. Yeah. See, it's because you heard my jukebox stories and you're like, I got to get my jukebox game right.
So really what the catalyst was?
Yeah.
Was Collide. It's a song. So stupid.
Shame.
He's just so
He's going to fight you.
He does so stupid. Was TikTok.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah. TikTok. And we were talking about since we're just not landing the plane at all this morning, just strictly entertainment.
I didn't even know we had taken off yet.
Well, we're live from
much less
Chevrolet Studios.
I was like, hey, we should probably set up the show since we didn't yesterday.
Well, we get to that. You can get to us on the YouTube channel. We're on AM 590, of course.
ESPN
Omaha, being a part of what we do. But listen, so the Danos guy, we were talking about. Gosh, I had to reset my.
You're like algorithm.
Yeah. Algorithm. I always want to say logarithm. It's algorithm,
the algorithm,
right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, smart guy. See that little condescending, passive aggressive stuff. Low key gets under my skin, but I'm used to it.
I don't even mean to do it.
Of course
like,
not.
It's totally involuntary.
I know, I get it. It's like, yeah, that's pretty dumb. It's
no,
but I think I used to say logarithm too, and nobody ever corrected me.
Well, yeah, I think a lot of people probably don't know the difference, and I'd have a hard time articulating the difference, but I know it's algorithm.
Is there articulable suspicion? I get a lot of police arrests or bad arrests or whatnot to do on my TikTok.
Yeah.
Kind of weird because I try to stay above the fray.
I would say I don't watch those. Those give me anxiety. I don't like those.
I've been walking around. Shane, is that the fray? No, it's not the fray.
No. The fray is
I'm gonna use some. Oh, that's Kings of Leon.
That's Kings of Leon. No, the fray is like
did that just roll off your Rolodex? You like that this morning?
I don't love Kings of Leon, but I
like that song.
But they're like in my sweet spot music wise in terms of time. Like they were very prominent in some of my more
Cyndi Lauper, Lou Albano time, like after time.
No, that's a little before my time.
Because guess what? If you fall, I ain't catching a goddamn thing. But anyway, I was on TikTok, and between that and the cooking thing is back.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. Like, because my buddy, the one that said that he likes your personality.
Yeah.
So he texted me one time during the morning show. He's like, hey man, you can reset that thing. So he didn't necessarily tell me how. He just said you could do it. So I went in my profile and I had to push like 67 buttons. I'm not kidding. I did it twice because I'm like, well, this sucks. It didn't really work.
Yeah.
But now I'm getting a lot of the Danos guy.
Okay.
And Danos is in Danos Seasoning. And he was singing while he was cooking. So then I was like, yeah, I remember that song.
Kind of got you vibing a little bit.
Yeah, he kind of drops food on the floor and he makes what seems like complicated recipes pretty simple.
Okay.
So that's to land the plane. That's where the music thing came.
Speaking of TikTok, so I was, as you can see, I have a lot of beverages here.
Yeah, like you look like you went to the grocery store. That's a little much.
Yeah, it's aggressive.
Why so many Dr. Peppers? Are you not going home?
No, this is where I was getting to with the TikTok thing. So have you gotten on like ADHD TikTok at all?
No.
So
that's the last thing I need.
Well, no. So it's
unless it teaches you how to manage it.
It does. Yeah. A lot of it is like, well, first of all, it like diagnoses you because I didn't realize I probably have ADHD.
Dude, do you have any extra Adderall?
I don't. I am not medicated for it.
Can I say that out loud? It should be cool. At least it's not Omniprec or Ceph or whatever everybody's taking.
I don't even know what those are. I know what Adderall is, but
people are just going to be whining. People are just going to be winding up, keeling over, man, trying to do that stuff for weight loss. It's like, over the long haul, that's not healthy for you. But hey, knock yourself out.
Teach their own. But no, so I kind of got on this. That's
my little buddy.
This like 80.
She's a teenager.
No,
now.
she's hilarious.
Yeah.
My wife loves the bats video.
I was waving.
I did. I was like, who's over there? Freaking bats.
Freaking bats.
My wife loves that video.
She's a little cutie pie.
But so I got on this like ADHD TikTok stuff, and it's like, hey, do you do all these things? It's like, yeah, you probably have adult ADHD, and you were never diagnosed. And I was like, oh man, they're just calling me out like this. But the like drinks are one of them where you have like several drinks all the time. It's like they call them like. It's dumb. They call them like emotional support water bottles. It's like people like that can't.
Oh, that might be like why I carry this.
Yeah. Like I have one of these with me at all times. But then I go like a further step. The idea of not having something to drink gives me anxiety.
Oh, dang! I think we're in the same game.
So like I bring extra, understanding it's way too much because I don't want to rely on someone else to make sure I have something.
You
to
know
drink.
how gangs have street names?
Yeah,
we should be like Liquid Block. Man, what set you claiming? Hey, we're on. I'm down with Liquid Block.
We're on the,
and we just throw up like L's.
We need to get like a Q,
and everybody be like losers. Yeah, we're on Liquid Block.
We're the Yeti gang.
So that's a lot. The last
it is.
So full disclosure, I watched a dude ruin a pork shoulder doing the Dr. Pepper method, and he's a young kid. He's always doing like but he shows you the bad stuff. It's not always his good stuff.
Sure, which I appreciate.
So his pellet smoker ran out of pellets.
Oh, that's no good.
And his little girl got on his phone and like killed his battery. So his temp thing wasn't set. He goes, I don't know what color this pork is supposed to be, but I'm gonna try to pull this thing anyway. Because when he walked out in the morning, it was down to like 106.
Yeah,
and he pulled it and he ate it anyway. But then he warmed it up in the skillet. And I was like, that kind of defeats the purpose.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. I guess we should probably stick to sports.
Let's set. Well, I don't care.
What is happening today?
Let's set the show up. By the way, we're powered by Currency here on Hail Varsity Radio.
Big Currency guy.
We've got a bunch of stuff for you today. We've got Tom Dienhart coming up at 7:45. We're going to talk some Purdue. We've got our guy Brandon Vogel coming up at 8 o'clock.
An OG.
We got Scott Dochterman talking Iowa at 8:45.
It was between Doc and Lesticow, and we went with Doc. But Lesticow had a nice little synopsis on the hiring of Fickle and Rule. I saw Lesticow in Indy.
Yeah.
He took a deep dive into both coaches.
Ooh, that's nice.
Yeah, I'll send you the link.
Well, so we should get him.
Cost you 99 cents, but
that's all right. And at 9 o'clock, we've got not at number 9. At 9 o'clock, we've got Mike J. Schaefer joining us.
Is this the first week of his new time slot, Shane?
No, we had him last week. First week for you.
Yeah, what did you have to rub it in?
Yeah, that's very true.
You know what I mean?
Just like to remind you that some of us worked last week.
L Block. Remember, we're down with L Block.
The Yeti gang.
Yeah. So anyway, I didn't finish the pork butt story. He did a Dr. Pepper thing. So he pulled a Shane and he bought 2 cases of Dr. Pepper, even though he only needed 5 cans.
Okay.
And he seasoned it late. He kind of scored it. My man scored it with a pocket knife. I mean, he's super OG. Like he didn't give a what.
That's a move.
Yeah. So I kind of like the fact not everything he does is perfect.
Yeah, that dude would probably give my wife like a heart attack. Like she doesn't like when people are kind of
there's
improvising.
So there's 2 people I'm addicted to.
Yeah.
One, good thing you're not severe, because he would say that I'm what's the word? What's the heavy set dude that used to always be on TikTok, and he would say it's Oh, exploitation.
Oh, okay.
So there's this girl, Zacchaeus. She's always eating, right? And she's mildly
she's a little bigger.
Obese.
Okay, a little bigger.
Yeah. So she's constantly cooking, and everything she says is, "Hey, y'all." Like, that's how she starts the video. She's constantly eating, right? But she has like over 1 million followers. She's funny. But the other dude he's Southern. I think he's Southern vibing. And he starts out every TikTok with, "Oh my Lord, I'm about to learn, y'all."
You told me about him,
and
I was like, I don't think I could listen to that.
Every video. But so now what I started doing, because some of his, I mean, he did teach me how to like debone a wing.
Okay, yeah.
And how to make chicken drumsticks, like slicing around the tendon. But his shoe game is kind of like what you do. Like, he's always in a different pair of nice tennis shoes, and he has that. He's from the South, like maybe Louisiana.
Yeah, a little bit of Cajun.
And he always says, "Now you got to bust the meat on down." So in my head, I always say that to myself. But yeah, that was like 18 minutes of random.
That's all right.
Anyway, good morning.
Just in case people are wondering, I'm rocking the all white Air Jordan 1.
I like those. Those are the ones.
Yep. The ones are one of my favorite pairs of shoes.
I have on some old school knit Adidas.
See, I've started wearing more knit. I like the knit shoes.
Me too.
Part of it is,
are my ankles ashy?
I don't think so. I think you look all right.
All right. Can I do that on camera?
Yeah, it's fine.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Dude, you can tell I'm all the way back at work, right?
By the way, you can get a hold of us 888-638-4876.
Oh, he's a professional.
Give us a call. See if you think Damon's ankles are ashy. You can let us know.
I always tell the kids at practice when they try to get on me, it's where the hair doesn't grow. So it's a little bit different color.
Yeah, so it's a little discolored.
Yeah, because I wear no shows, man. It ain't the tan. And I keep my arms good, so there's no farmer thing going on.
Yeah, you wear long sleeves. Though. Oh, man, mine's bad. So, you see that tan line right there?
Yeah. Come on, man. What are we doing?
Just showing off our tan line.
Ring around the Ravi.
It's bad. No, look at the glasses one. You see the one? You see the glasses one?
Oh yeah,
it's rough.
So what do you do outside?
I play pickleball.
Oh, that's right. You did say you'd wear me out, and that was aggressive too. By just
I didn't say I'd wear you out. I said I'd wear Coach Rule.
Well, I know, but you're like, I'm pretty good.
Well, you know.
So people play pickleball across the street from me all the time.
Yeah,
yeah.
And I get after.
Wow,
it.
no.
What?
No offense, but you guys kind of look alike. And he plays every day.
It's a popular sport amongst my people.
bad.
You haven't thought about it.
Man, me neither. Just roll right off the tongue, Coach Rule. And he looks like he's nice.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of.
It's popular.
It is. It's a popular activity amongst the the South Asian community in Omaha. Hey, that's the first segment. I don't know what's coming up next.
Oh,
I think we'll still be here. That's Damon Betting. I'm Ravi, Lulla, Shane Chillenberg producing.
A couple of coaches.
We'll talk about sports at some point.
Maybe next.
Probably.
Yeah.
More coffee and cream next.
Rogers and Betting will be back in 5 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes.
It's steep, but by no stretch of the imagination would we be that hard-headed. It's steep, but by no stretch of the imagination would we be that hard-headed. If that was going to be detrimental to a kid being able to go out there and function.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
It's steep, but by no stretch of the imagination would we be that hard-headed. If that was going to be detrimental to a kid being able to go out there and function and be able to play with, with his speed, then we would definitely scale back anything we had to. We're not an organization that's going to say this is what we do. You got to figure it out. Like, we're going to maximize the athletic traits of our kids and let them play freely.
I can vibe with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Welcome back to Coffee and Cream. That's Damon Benning. I'm Ravi Lulla. We are here live from the H&H Chevrolet studio, and we've got a lot to get to today. There's low-key actually a lot going on.
Oh, yeah,
as
sure.
You probably could not tell by our first segment.
Yeah, it was, you got to ease into
Yeah,
it.
you got to, you don't have to jump right in the deep end.
You can't shoot your shot right off the bat. You got to kind of get a lay of the land.
But I'm glad Shane
Not
played
everybody
that.
can be down with L block.
Take some, we're not for everyone. Much like Nebraska, we're not for everyone.
Hey, we're not going to do that. It's detrimental. We're not going to do that as an organization.
That was a really interesting thing I thought that Satterfield said.
Right? Kind of flew under the radar.
Yeah, and I wrote it down almost exactly word for word what that clip was that Shane played is, we will scale back whatever we have to, this is summarizing, to maximize the athletic traits of our kids. Like, that sounds really duh, right?
Hey, how's that sound again?
Duh. But how many times, have we seen, oh, this guy just doesn't know the play, we can't get him in the game.
Oh.
And I've said this for years, and I might be totally out of line here.
Probably.
Most likely. That tends to be where
I'm going to go ahead. If you preface it with that, I'm going to go ahead and ride with it.
I might, that's kind of where I live. It's fine. But I've said for years, you can't tell me that these guys that are playing as true freshmen at the Alabama, Ohio State, LSUs of the world are all football savants that get the playbook memorized like that.
Yeah.
You can't tell me that. I don't believe it. Yeah. So they're doing something to get those guys on the field that Nebraska doesn't do. And I get they're more developed in certain areas and things like that. Yeah, but
so are their peers.
Yes, right? They're still...
It's all relative.
The guys that they're competing against for jobs are also better.
Yeah.
So on a scale here, we should be about even. Maybe even it's easier to get on the field theoretically at Nebraska because the guys ahead of you maybe aren't as good.
Right.
Those guys aren't going to the NFL like the guys at Alabama are, right? Well. So, tell me if I'm crazy, but if they can do it at those places, why hasn't Nebraska been able to do it? That's something I've never been able to figure out, and nobody's ever been able to give me a good answer to.
No, I'm vibing. I'm definitely vibing with you. And isn't it weird? Because that was in regards to Doss.
Yeah, the wide receivers, right?
So, they say he's kind of this combination of size and speed. I don't really know how big he is, but I guess when you look at like a Jalen Lloyd or a Malachi Coleman,
sure,
or some of these guys that are a little more angular and thin. And I think the thing that I liked about Doss is that you still got to be able to run some sort of a semblance of routes.
Yes.
Right. But a lot of the fan base thinks really conventional like you did, right? Like, hey, listen, if you're fast, I don't care if it's a skinny, if it's a fade, if it's a go route, like if it's an over route, like just do that.
Well, right? And it's not, for me, it's not just about the speed, right? I understand that there is a skill to route running. I understand that being a great route runner can overcome maybe some physical deficiencies in terms of, look at some of the guys in the NFL, right, that have made great careers, like a Cooper Kupp, for instance. Not the most physically impressive guy in the world.
Would you rather be Cooper Kupp or more one-dimensional like DK Metcalf?
I'd rather look like DK Metcalf. That dude's jacked up, 6'5",
yeah, that's too big for me. But
6'5" is probably on the tall end of what I would want to be. But Cooper Kupp could walk down the street and you wouldn't even know he's a professional athlete, right? He's got the Greg Maddux type deal a little bit.
Yeah.
Just very unassuming, just kind of a normal sized guy who just happens to be awesome at football. I don't know. I've always valued skill more than physical ability. So I'd probably go Cooper Kupp.
Yeah.
In terms of,
you'll take a shooter over a rim runner.
Yeah, I'm a Steph guy, so that kind of is. I'm a big Pistol Pete guy. I like the skill sets, right? So give me a skill set over a physical freak. But I think with the Nebraska receivers and kind of what Nebraska has been doing in general is.
Hang on, real quick.
Yeah.
So Maddox or Clemens?
Oh, Maddox. I'm a Maddox guy. Well, I hate Clemens for other reasons.
Oh, God.
I'm not saying Maddox was better or more dominant.
No, and I'm not getting that.
I prefer Maddox.
The Red Sox guy hates Clemens?
Because, it's because of how he went down. He totally mailed in the end of his career with the Red Sox, goes to the Rays, or to the Jays. All of a sudden, it's oh, I guess I'm good again. There is a lot of animosity towards Clemens in the Red Sox nation. They are very upset with him because he totally mailed in his last few years and then decided to win 4 more Cy Youngs. So there's not a lot.
Well, he finally got fit, right? Remember? Nudge, nudge, wink, wink.
Yeah, he fit. He got some help with with some of those injections you were talking about
I have
earlier.
no idea what you're talking about. So even with backs, right? We would say with Wandale, I remember always hearing, "Oh, just get him out in space," or "Just get him out in." It's funny. It's like, "Hey, you go run a swing route. We're gonna throw you the ball. You're gonna be wide open."
Yeah, it's like,
right?
You mean nobody's gonna cover him? Oh,
yeah,
that's
it
terrific.
doesn't really work like that. But I do like the fact that they talk all the time about finding what guys do well and doing that. Because I remember for years, this is probably 6-7 years in a row, and he said it to me again in Indy, but I was chopping it up with Jay, and he was like, Foreman, he said, "You mean to tell me they can't find 10 plays for player X, 12 plays for player
That's
X?"
what I've always said. Like, you can't put a package together of stuff they know how to do.
And he was even thinking more defensively. Like, if a guy is a good pass, because he's seen it happen, right?
Get him on the field in pass rush situations.
Terrell Farley or DeMario Williams, or where you just play to people's skill sets.
We saw it with, I only know this because he was a 49er guy, but Alden Smith at Missouri.
Yeah.
In college, he was only on the field in like third down, obvious pass rush situations. His first year in the NFL, he was only on the field in third down, obvious pass rush situations. You can't tell me that you can't find spots for these guys that are athletically superior to the people playing ahead of them.
No, I'm with you.
Understand there's a part of you that you have to have a certain amount of people that understand the entire scheme of what you're trying to do. But on those guys that aren't there yet, that are really gifted, you can't find spots for them.
Yeah, figure it out.
The thing that it reminds me of is, and I think you'll appreciate this because you're an NBA guy, it reminds me of the Spurs, right? Greg Popovich would sign guys that nobody else wanted because he liked what they could do and he didn't focus on what they can't do, right? Everybody else in the league, when they analyze a player, when they're scouting a player, they think about what they're trying to get this whole package of a player, right? They're going, oh, what can this guy do? What can this guy do? Oh, but he can't do X, Y, Z. Greg Popovich doesn't care about the X, Y, and Z. He goes, I need you to do ABC. You can do ABC. You're going to be really good for us. That's all I'm going to ask you to do. And then they look great. That's why Danny Green almost wins the finals MVP, because he only was ever asked to do ABC, and he was really, really good at ABC. Everybody else scared that he couldn't create his own shot. He couldn't dribble, and he couldn't do this, and he couldn't do that. Well, guess what? He can shoot, and he can defend at an elite level at the wing spot. Just have him do that.
Novel.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, just have him do the thing that he's really good at.
And that's why, hey, Shane, is Brandon at 743?
We've got Dienhart at 745.
Shane, should we try to sneak Daniel in or no?
No, I'll let him know to call back.
Okay, are you sure?
I think we've got a spot at
Tell him to hit snooze.
8:30.
Okay, so listen. Oh, he gets a long segment too, a little bit longer. Hey, so back to that train of thought. So, basically I said people are always trying to figure out what Nebraska's offense is, right? It's obviously going to be run heavy, run action. I think they will get out on the perimeter and run a ton of option. And they'll have packages for that, right? Like if you like Harburg or you like Purdue, you think they're athetic.
That was one of my big takeaways from watching South Carolina tape the last
I was vibing with your text, right? Like watching them and the QB run game
with Joyner getting in there for Rattler. There's gonna be a package for either Harburg or I don't know if they've got like a wide receiver or somebody they like in like a wildcat thing. But Joyner played quarterback in South Carolina the year before, so I think it's going to be Harburg or Purdy because they want the threat of the throw, even if they don't use it a ton.
So it's interesting because I remember we were at a couple of practices and I was with Dom, Dylan's dad, Brayola, not Donnie. And he was specifically talking about times they took the quarterback off the field for QB run stuff.
Yeah.
And I didn't know if like he didn't like it or what, but he I just knew like, okay, he's obviously studying Sat's pattern. But I think you're absolutely right. Like
they did if you at South Carolina.
If you think Harburg's a top 10 athlete, you'll figure out how to
get him on the field.
Get him on the
field.
field.
I don't care if he plays quarterback or what. They'll get him on the field.
Or, whatever the skill set is. Like Ramir Johnson is another guy that I think is
going to get him on the field.
Yeah, they're going to
figure
find
out a way to get him on the field.
Things that he does really well. Janarian Bonner, Borkature. They'll find.
I want to come back to Bonner.
Okay,
because there's a corollary at
we're
South.
Kind of sleeping.
On there's a corollary at South Carolina that they used a ton. Tom Dienhart coming up next on Coffee and Cream.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning. We'll be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning. We'll be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning. We'll be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning. We'll be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
Oh, I mean, it's this offense, it could be a lot at first, especially when you're coming in the summer and you're kind of getting a little overwhelmed just from, being a college athlete, being a student and an athlete. But the guys, they're taking it head on. We're still pumping in volume and volume and they're attacking it. That's one thing about those guys is their work ethic on and off the field is very, very impressive.
Welcome back to Coffee and Cream here on a Tuesday. Ravi, Lulla, Damon Benning is here. He's not putting his headset on, so I think he's just chilling. Maybe I'll host the show with Shane the rest of the way. I don't know if Damon's going to join me, but who I know is joining us is our
my main man
at Pratt Dental. Pratt Dental does the BioClear method. It is an alternative to a crown. You can do multiple restorations in the same day. Takes less time, less waiting, and it's less invasive. Dr. Pratt, located in North Platte, is the only dentist in Nebraska that provides this service. He is certified for it. Nobody else in Nebraska is certified on the BioClear method. You can get a modern smile design, correct many aesthetic dilemmas in a permanent and less evasive manner than traditional treatments such as crowns. Dr. Pratt Dental, creating healthy smiles.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Are you feeling stress-free, having gotten that one out of the way?
I feel good. Talking about
are you
our
nervous
friends.
about the dentist?
I'm not a guy that loves the dentist, but it's not something that I dread necessarily. It's not a huge pain point for me.
I enjoy the feeling of feeling the grooves in my teeth when I get them clean, but I don't know about like
the actual experience.
Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, I could do without it, but it's not one of those, I feel like I get anxiety about everything. It's not something that causes me like an undue amount of stress.
Let's hope the fans in West Lafayette don't
Feel
gnash or
this-
grind their teeth or pull their teeth out over the injury situation with the Boilermakers.
Tom Dienhart here with us, joining us here today from goldenblack.com. Tom, how are you?
Good to hear your voice, Damon. Hope you're doing good, buddy.
I'm good. Hey, so I feel terrible. I walked right past you in Indianapolis, and without speaking, I usually always try to catch you early, but man, you gotta love the presence and the impact of your new hire. Like his aura is one that exudes confidence. I thought if you could win a presser, he did in Indianapolis.
Yeah, you're right. He checked the confidence box, if you will, and why not? You got to believe in yourself. And his resume is pretty glowing for a guy who's only 37 years old. Of course, we know his most recent work at Illinois, especially last year, was outstanding, coordinating that defense. Work under Gary Pinkel and Eli Drinkwitz at Mizzou, out at Arizona with Mike Stoops, Colorado with Dan Hawkins, where he played. So, yeah, it's a nice resume, or kind of an on the come coach, if you will, and but an unproven coach too. Just remember that. So there's just a lot of unknowns as Purdue gets ready for its opener September 2nd against Fresno State.
Tom, I'm a little curious. With the Ryan Walters hire, obviously a lot of teams in the Big Ten were switching over coaches this year, and Purdue kind of swims in a different end of the pool in terms of what candidates they were looking at. How does that go over with kind of the fan base? Is a hire like Ryan Walters seen as a home run for kind of what you guys were looking at?
I think it was a surprise to a lot of people, to be honest with you. You guys are obviously big football people, and the trend always typically is to hire an offensive guy. But Purdue zigged when everybody thought it was going to zag, right? Not only didn't hire an offensive guy, hired a defensive guy who's never been a head coach. So, and if you're a school like Purdue, I think sometimes maybe you have to try to think outside the box or do something different, right? You got to look for something that sets you apart. And going with the defensive coach, Purdue hopes that will improve that side of the ball. And I think as much as anything, too, though, guys, I think they hope it improves recruiting as well. There's a young staff, not just Walters, but the entire staff is pretty young. I think there's only 2 assistants who are 50 years old. And Purdue's seen some early returns with the class of 2024. They're off to a nice start here, so they're trying to upgrade the talent here. And I think Ryan feels like he's got the offense in good hands with Graham Harrell calling the plays. That's sort of his side of the ball. And Ryan knows this is a quarterback-centric school. And Graham Harrell and this air raid-based offense is going to play to that heritage, and I think help them reap some dividends when it comes to recruiting quarterbacks too.
A sneaky tough opener, in my opinion, with Fresno State on the 2nd. How's the health situation with camp? I know sometimes Nebraska fans think they're the only ones that we're the only ones that are snake bitten, but Purdue's had some struggles of their own.
Yeah, everybody does. Every fan base thinks the sky's falling right when these injuries happen in camp, and bumps and bruises. They did lose a wide receiver, transfer from Florida Atlantic to a season-ending knee injury, which hurt. But by and large, again, the only guys that have been out are dealing with kind of day-to-day stuff. They're still hoping to get Gus Hartwig, their number 1 star center back.
Yeah.
He had a knee injury late last year, and he's probably not going to be ready for the start of the year, bringing him along slowly. So you're watching Gus Hartwig, and the 2 other guys that got hurt last year missed the entire season. One of the defensive linemen, DeMarjorie Lewis, and then, of course, their star tight end, Garrett Miller. Both should be ready for the season, but we're really taking it easy with them in camp. By and large, I think if you're a Purdue coach, you have to be pretty pleased with where your health is as they head to the home stretch of camp.
Bittersweet may be a term. It's more bitter for Nebraska fans, sweet for the folks in West Lafayette. I kind of feel like Purdue, Nebraska, that game was Maccabee's coming out party, right? He started to kind of get it going heading into that one. He gets a few more carries against Nebraska, really kind of helped shoulder the run game load in that one. And, man, he looks sleek and trim, man. How about the emergence of Maccabee? Did you see that coming?
Nobody did. A true Cinderella story, just like Aiden O'Connell was a true Cinderella story. That was actually his first start of his career was the Nebraska game. But he had been coming on before then, obviously. Almost became Purdue's first 1,000-yard rusher since 2008. If you can believe it's been that long, 2008. But, yeah, just, if you stand next to Devin Maccabee, there's physically nothing remarkable about him at all. You wonder how he holds up. He's not an imposing guy. Doesn't have muscles on top of muscles. Doesn't have an 18-inch neck or anything. But he's got a way to get through that line and twist and contort. He's relentless, too. He can catch the ball. So he may not have to carry a super huge load this year. They got two other backs. That's actually one of their better rooms, I think, is the running back room. Tyrone Tracy, the former Iowa receiver who transferred to Purdue last year, is now a full-time running back. They like him a lot. And then Dylan Down is another veteran. So they have a nice three-headed monster back there, running back. If all three of those guys can run and, of course, catch it too.
Tom, I'm curious. We're talking of Tom Dienhart. He covers Purdue for On 3. I'm curious with Hudson Card, a couple weeks into fall camp now, how are the feelings about the marriage between him and Graham Harrell on that offensive side of the ball?
The honeymoon continues to rage. I mean, it started when he got here back in January, went through spring ball, and players, coaches, the praise has been effusive for Hudson Card. He wears number 1. And he's going to be the straw that stirs the drink. No real shock there, right? He seems like a good young man, sort of a muted personality. You really thought Steve Sarkisian wanted his guys at Texas. He lost the job a couple times down there to Quinn Ewers. And, of course, they bring in Arch Manning, too. But, this is a quarterback Ryan Walters wanted right from the jump. He got the job in December, and he was on a plane to Austin, Texas, almost the very next day or two to try to recruit Hudson Card and ended up getting his man. So he's going to have to be a star for this offense to click. I think there's a lot of potential. He's got some skill to work with. The tight end room's good, decent receivers. The line, of course, has to come together, which I know is a big concern, but I think they have enough there to make it work. So, all eyes are going to be on Hudson Card. This is his team, and like I said, he's got to play like a star if this team wants to try to get back to a bowl game.
We'll see what happens at Northwestern at the quarterback spot with who wins that job. But for the West, all sorts of new faces at the quarterback spot of portal transfers, and most give the nod to Purdue and the intrigue of Nebraska, right? We're not sure about McNamara because he's tagged with Brian Ferentz. Mordecai is in a new system in Wisconsin, not new to him, but with Longo. And we know with Sims and Nebraska, is Card, was he, in your opinion, do you think he's kind of the gem of the portal class? Or are you intrigued as much by Sims' upside as well?
Yeah, I think Illinois got a portal guy.
Oh, yeah, they do. They had a couple.
Yeah,
Altmaier.
So, yeah, and I think McNamara had some injury he suffered the other day. I'm not sure how serious it is, but I digress. But you're right, Damon. Ravi, a lot of new faces, transfer portal quarterbacks, and maybe Hudson Card is the gem. Just thinking through my head, McNamara played a lot of football in Michigan, so I guess maybe I'd give him a little bit of a nod. But Hudson Card had 5 starts at Texas, and he has a chance to be as good as any of these portal quarterbacks in the Big Ten West, I think. And for Purdue guys, a month or two ago, Las Vegas came out with their over/under projected win totals for every team, and Purdue was at 5.5. And to me, that sounds about spot on. To me, if this team goes 6-6 and gets to any bowl, I think it'll be a good year. A lot of turnover, 19 portal transfers. And again, if they keep it together and get to any type of bowl, it's going to be key. And for Purdue guys, Illinois and Nebraska, those two schools are fighting with, I think, to finish in the high third or fourth in conference, or in that division, I should say.
Tom, we appreciate your time as always. I'm sure we'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, TD.
Thanks for having me. Take care, buddy.
That's our friend Tom Dienhart covering Purdue football for On3.com. Coming up next, another friend, Brandon Vogel, Hail Varsity, right here on Coffee and Cream.
Hello, friend.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes.
I think just a brotherhood and a camaraderie on offense.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
I think just a brotherhood and a camaraderie on offense. I think there's a lot of trust with our offensive line. I think there's a lot of trust that's developing with Jeff. I think Jeff's developing a lot of trust with certain players on the team that he can trust to get open at certain times of the game. So I think just the brotherhood and the camaraderie is just you see it growing every day. And the guys are making an attempt to make it grow. It's not, they're not fighting it. They're out there trying to, learn other people's names, learn things about families. Like, Coach Rule in team meeting stuff at night challenges them, learn to, talk to other people. Don't just sit with the same people all the time. So just the brotherhood, I think, is improving.
Welcome back to Coffee and Cream here on Hail Varsity Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, powered by Currency. Damon Benning, right there. Ravi, Lulla, right here. We are joined now by our friend Brandon Vogel of Hail Varsity. Brandon, how you doing today?
Not too bad. How are you guys?
I'm good, B. Vogues, man. I've been missing you. You doing all right?
I'm doing all right. Yeah, seems like you've been pretty busy with preseason camp.
Yeah, fortunately and fortunately, but I came back. I'm fired up and ready to go, man. Ravi's got my wheels turning after listening to Coach Satterfield. And a couple months ago, he and I got into the simple versus easy thing, right? Something sounds simple and doesn't always appear that easy. Listen to Coach Satterfield. He was talking about DOS, right? He uttered the phrase, they would be basically doing a disservice if they don't play to folks' strengths, right? Like, find something they can do and get them on the field. Why do you feel like that's been so elusive for Nebraska to get help from young guys, right? It started a long time. We like to blame Frost for everything. I don't.
It's gone way back.
But remember, it was kind of Coach Solich that uttered the phrase, he's kind of swimming in things. Like, Bo Pelini doubled down on that. Like, what has been so elusive for Nebraska to get young help early?
Yeah, that's a tough question to answer. I mean, I agree with you. Like, Frost gets blamed for a lot of things, and it's an easy one where you can point to kind of like his reputation as an offensive play caller. You could associate some ego with that of being like, well, the offense works, like the offense is good, like it's up to you guys to figure it out. But you go past that, even just to sort of the Langsford era, which I thought was a pretty good offense at times.
Yeah.
But even there, it wasn't the like, hey, we've got this freshman. Wandale Robinson's a good example. Not the Langsford era, but they got him involved. It was a guy where it was like, we just need to get him X number of touches a game. Now, unfortunately, some of those touches came in ways that eventually kind of pushed him to a different option. But it's strange because it really does go back. I mean, I certainly remember it. I started covering the team during Pelini era. Remember there of like, yeah, there's a lot to get used to. I think it probably all comes down to you just got to be a little bit egoless if you're going to be with a guy like Doss that's like, you know what, this guy can do one or two things really, really well. We're going to have to be smart with how we use that, but we're going to give him the opportunity to do those things. And you're also going to take, because you can't just put him out there to run 3 or 4 plays. We're going to take the bumps in the road where teams know that, oh, he's not really a threat here, but you gotta kind of balance that.
Brandon, I'm curious because we kind of got talking about how it seems like this staff is more interested in what guys can do than sort of picking the holes in what they can't do in their game. Do you think that's kind of an accurate description of how they're viewing their position groups right now?
I think so. And I think probably right now, wide receiver is maybe the best example of that, where, they're experiencing some real limitations and some real inexperience. I mean, I think Rule has said things effectively to that almost directly about, you come in as a new coach and everybody's ready to tell you what these guys can't do. And, it's easy to be like, I'm the guy that likes to focus on what they can. But if that's what you're really about, I mean, that's a pretty significant philosophical switch of if you could show up and you've got 8, 9, 10 guys, however many it is, that are like, yeah, he can't do this. Well, then what do you do with that? Like, if you buy into that line of thinking, then you've just got 8, 9, 10. And we're not talking about guys down the depth chart in that case. We're talking about contributors who are just like, yeah, he plays for us, but don't ask him to do X, Y, Z. It's kind of up to you as a coach to figure out, well, if that's true, if I determine for myself that's true, but we don't have better options, I better figure out a way to minimize X, Y, Z, whatever those kind of negative characteristics, I guess, are.
Brandon, you said something that, which you often do, that leads me to think of something else. You said something about egoless, and I'm kind of nodding my head because it does have to be that way. How much of a direct correlation between the way Coach Rule put the staff together and their personalities versus their development in terms of finding roles for guys and figuring it out has to do with the fact that they don't appear to be a staff where individually they have a lot of other aspirations and egos, right? He doesn't appear to be coaching with anybody that wants his job.
Yeah, I think that's important, and I think that's another one where Rule has said at various times that like he wants these guys to progress. Which every coach is going to say that, but it's drastically different in my mind, and I don't mean this as a negative in any way, but it's drastically different bringing in somebody like Marcus Satterfield, who broadly in college football, was anybody talking about that South Carolina offense the past 2 years?
Right. Yeah.
Not that I saw, versus say Wisconsin, where you bring in a Jeff Levy, a guy who is a name for his offensive system, his play calling, like where he came up through. And of course, both can work. Both might end up working, but it's a very different thing. And you kind of look at this staff and say, okay, well, who are the future head coaches here? And I don't even know if that's a worthwhile measure, but it's something you have to think about as the guy in charge. And for me, you get down the list a little bit of some of the younger coaches because they just have more time and more maybe a ceiling still to figure out where their ceiling is. Those are the first ones that come to mind for me. So bringing in a Satterfield, even Tony White, who was the kind of the big hire. I mean, he's a coordinator outside of their typical family, doing good things at Syracuse. But again, like you had to get pretty deep into the college football weeds to find somebody to be like, let me tell you, here's a guy you need to watch for. It's Tony White. And that's not a negative towards him. It's, largely, I think, a result of where they coached.
We're talking with Brandon Vogel of Hail Varsity. Brandon, I'm curious what your thought process is when you hear, I believe both Satterfield and McGuire yesterday talk about a positionless offense. I think part of that goes to what we're talking about just finding ways to get playmakers on the field. But I mean, from a practical standpoint, what do you start to visualize that might look like?
I think it mostly comes down to probably using your backs and receivers in creative ways. And I would include tight ends with the receivers there. I think back to that South Carolina-Tennessee game where South Carolina kind of had it going from the jump and was really pretty controlled, especially on their first drive, but they were picking up yards consistently with, some fairly standard passes. But as things like, as it was clear, like, Tennessee, which, wasn't great defensively a year ago, couldn't really stop them in that game. Then you started to see kind of all of we can play any card and think we can take the trick here from a play calling perspective. There was a couple of reverses. I think there was a wide receiver pass in there. And, and it's not like those kind of like trick plays become what it is to mean positionless, but I think it really is kind of literally defined of, hey, we're going to get guys the ball in creative ways. The key to doing that can't be your offense. That can be kind of your constraint. So you've got to be able to pick up those yards consistently, whether it's on the ground, whether it's through your kind of base passes. And that remains the big piece that, we just don't know about Nebraska yet. How are they going to move the ball on when it's, say, 2nd and 6? It's just a 50-50 down. And what are you going to do?
That's interesting. I think of guys like Bonner, Borkacher, Fedoni, because one thing I know for sure, if I couldn't tell you exactly what the offense will look like, I do know the premises make cornerbacks tackle and make linebackers cover. right? Like that's generally what they're after in terms of their concept. I can just imagine those guys, just a few of the aforementioned, breaking the huddle and you not being able to personnel them really as a defense, right? Well, this is 12 personnel or this is 21 like they could be anywhere. And I know it's kind of become a running joke, right? Well, Borkature could be a quarterback or Borkature could be a what? I do think there's something to that, though, if you operate under the assumption that they are after making cornerbacks tackle and making linebackers cover.
Yeah, I mean, and that's an interesting concept, just with where football has gone. I'm guessing linebackers have probably gotten better at coverage. They're just asked to do it more. Cornerbacks, as the game kind of eternally moves towards a little bit more pass, they've probably gotten a little bit worse at tackling. So that gets intriguing. And when you look at a guy like Fedoni, where he can line up in the slot. He can be your true wideout. He can be in line if you want him to be, and certainly with Bonner. Just based on where he's coming from, we'll see how much he's ready for. But kind of a true jackknife of a player. You can get creative, and going in the huddle here is one of those areas where it might okay, we can see we're sitting back there in the huddle. We can see what 11 numbers are on the field and kind of get ready for that. But if you break that huddle pretty quickly and, all of a sudden Fedoni's outside the numbers or something, it becomes a scramble in a way that I think teams are maybe less used to as everybody's gotten used to kind of up-tempo, no-huddle stuff.
Yeah, it's just weird. We, as a defense, helping put it together at the high school level, we're a spilled defense, so we want most things to bounce. And we try at all costs not to have things spilled to corners. Mm-hmm. But if our corners can tackle, we feel really good about how we can play as a defense. I think sometimes we forget that even though linebackers are better in space, they're still not as good as your secondary guys in coverage for the most part. And cornerbacks still don't tackle as much as interior guys. Sometimes I just think we make it too complicated.
Yeah. It's, I think a lot of the times in college football that's becoming a question is, it's always been if you got two really good corners, you're going to be able to do some things. But the tackling piece of the equation really comes to the forefront in an era of football like we're in right now.
And it's funny, too, because I said the number 1 and 2 traits that Coach White asks of his secondary is you have to be tough and you have to be able to tackle. Right? So I'm operating under the assumption that he knows that that's what people will try to do as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that's an area where, Nebraska having the numbers it does back there and the freedom of a first-year coaching staff to just be yeah, we know who's played a lot, but really this is kind of an equal footing scenario. You got a lot of options, and I expect to see a lot of options back there.
Brandon, I'm curious. We talk a lot about the offensive side of the ball with Satterfield, and obviously that's who we heard from yesterday. It seems like we've spent less time. I don't know if it's just us or if it's kind of a general thing, but it seems like we've spent less time trying to figure out what the defense is going to look like. Is that just because we don't have as good of a frame of reference for the 3-3-5 as maybe we do on the offensive side, or is it just we like offense more than defense?
I think it's a little bit of both of those things. I also think there maybe is a dash of, well, you can look at the defense, particularly the back six or the back 8, I guess in this case, and be yeah, there's some guys I feel pretty good about. When you start talking about Gifford and Hartzog and Newsome. And then the linebackers with Reimer and Henrich, at least as 2 guys who have played a ton of football. So I think there's a little bit of that in there too. And also, the billing for this 3-3-5 for the people who dug into it and gone out there and kind of did the offseason research is, expect a lot of blitzes, expect it to be pretty aggressive, which are things that people like. And kind of come from all angles. That tends to be the selling point, I think, for this type of approach. But at the end of the day, I think offense will always kind of lead the way in terms of intrigue, just because you got to be able to score points some way or another, unless you're going to be uber shut down defense, you're going to give up 12, 13 points a game. eventually you're just going to have to, you're going to be able, you need to score. And most of the questions, I think the big questions reside for Nebraska on that side of the ball.
Yeah, it's strange because I think I was just looking at social media, and my man Thomas said, it's interesting that Iowa was 130 out of 131 and still won 8 games. I think part of the fascination that we're talking about is I think as a fan base and in general in the media, we feel more comfortable talking about offense because it's more recognizable when it's going well than it is defense, right? 98% of the people watching don't know like responsibilities and who's supposed to have what. We think we do, but I think defense for the most part is harder for us to figure out to the naked eye than it is to look at offense.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think you're right. Like if you're a top 30 defense, if you're towards the bottom of those 30, you're probably giving up 22 points a game, something like that. And it's like, yeah, defense is hanging in there. Gave up some yards, but got some key stops. Like that's good defense. Especially today, offensively, like you could probably be a top 50 offense and get more credit for that. Just because of the yard totals, point totals, whatever it might be. And, like whatever's fair to expect for Nebraska is fair to expect. Everybody can kind of determine that on their own. But like, if things go really well, like if you told me Nebraska be a top 30 defense, top 50 offense, I'd be like, game on. Like that's a great first year in my mind. So it'd be interesting to see like which of those was viewed as better if we got to that at the end of that season, which if that were to happen, probably is about 8-4-ish somewhere in there.
It's funny. I was messing with Ravi yesterday. People are kind of sleeping on Clemson, and I think they're going to be coming from off the grid a little bit, especially as I look at the AP rankings yesterday. And they had over 400 yards a game last year in total offense. That number seems high for how we remember that Clemson offense. Is that a good number, do you think? Are you more about points per game for this offense this year or the yardage output as the staff tries to grow and develop the personnel within this offense?
Yeah, I think I have a bias towards points. Usually when I look at stats, like I like those that have some version of scoring in there because ultimately, like that's the ultimate goal, right? I think with this offense, with as many questions as I have now, basically 2 weeks and a couple of days from the opener, I think they're going to be defined by that. It's going to come down to are you able to maximize opportunities when you get on the opponent's half? Like all of like nitty gritty stuff that's not very fun, that's easy to miss, is what they're going to need to do to have a successful season on that side of the ball. So, somebody like Clemson, and obviously a lot of talent there, brings in one of the best OC hires of the offseason, I think. Certainly a guy who is his star is certainly rising. In Garrett Riley, pretty intriguing because there's the narrative out here that Clemson is these are kind of the last days of its great era, and I'm like, they still got a lot of the same quality of players they've always had. They're high on the new on their quarterback who we saw a little bit last year, and oh by the way, they brought in Garrett Riley who helped TCU get to the national championship game. So maybe let's take a wait and see approach with the Tigers.
Brandon Vogel, Hail Varsity. Great stuff as always. We appreciate your time and all the time that you always give us.
Appreciate you,
no problem. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
That's our friend Brandon Vogel, Hail Varsity.
I take. I mean, Illinois was like 210 passing last year, 166 on the ground.
You take that?
Would you take Illinois last year?
Yeah, I think I would.
So my point in saying that is,
I'll take it.
Sometimes the statistical number, like the actual hardcore data, doesn't matter as much as either efficiency or playing complementary football.
Yeah, so
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, Iowa's a bad example because we would lose our minds
if it
our
looked
offense,
like that.
Yeah, if our offense was was that inept.
So that's what I was actually just going to say is I watched a decent amount of Illinois last year. I watched obviously a ton of Iowa last year. And on paper, I'm sure that there's some difference because just how bad Iowa was, but the gap's probably not as big as my perception of their offenses.
At first blush, I'm inclined to probably agree.
Because I remember watching Illinois' offense, like, okay, it's not dynamic, but it didn't seem incompetent.
Well, remember some of the criticisms of Brown at the running back spot is he wasn't a game breaker. Chase Brown was, if you needed 5, he was going to get you 5. If you needed 3, 10, he was going to get you. If you needed 10, he was going to get you 5.
Yeah. You needed 3, he'd get you 5. You need 5, he'd get you 5. You need 10, he's getting you 5.
And I remember we were kind of capping that game, and it's like, gosh, just don't let him get to the high 20s in carries because
that's the only way he's going to get to.
That was all of a sudden mean that you gave up 150 yards to a back on the ground and they were possessing the ball. So I think the whole complimentary thing,
it's a big deal,
is a huge deal.
If Nebraska could look like Illinois did last year, I think we would all be thrilled.
Yes, I think I'm kind of, if like you're listening to me over the last 3 months, I'm talking myself into, I wouldn't mind being Illinois. Right,
at least in the near term.
Right. I want the good, strong,
really strong
defensive lines,
really strong complementary football,
and I like their gap. I like their it's gap scheme is what they do. I like their running design because it allows your offensive line to be powerful and kind of come off the ball. That's the number one thing I want to see about this offense. It's not Sims. It's not the wide receiving core. It's will I run the ball in such a way that allows my offensive line to have some success? And I just mean getting downhill, getting after guys. Because there's something to be said for just running the ball downhill, especially if you're not a heavily penalized team. You can win a ton with 2nd and 6 and a long 6s, even 7s to some degree, because
you get to 2nd and 6, 2nd and 7, you get to third
and 3s and third and 2s. Like that, those things are
manageable.
Very, very manageable.
Where you get in trouble is 2nd and 15.
Or 2nd and 8s and 9s.
And then 3rd and 6 or 7 or 10.
Right. So like if they can, how they want to run the ball and what they do with, like just, this is a little football-y, but not so much. Like if you could just sprinkle in like trap or veer, just though one of those concepts or 2 of them, it keeps your linemen theoretically at bay. Right. If I'm getting ready for game planning, I'm like, okay, what's their inside run game look like? How do they like to run the ball? Is it gap? Is it dart? Is it this? Because if they don't do certain things, I know that I can play a certain way defensively. So just the ability to run between guard, center guard, changes the way you can play defense sometimes.
Interesting. We'll get into that more. Cody, hang on the line here. We'll get into your call as well. We've got more of Coffee and Cream coming up next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 5 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes.
It's cool. I'm very lucky to be in this.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes.
I don't treat this as work.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
I don't treat this as work. I see Dr. Elza back there. Every day I show up to work, I don't view it as work. I get to work with Marcus Satterfield, Coach Rule, Coach Donnie, Coach Martin. I see Dr. Elza, who I've known since I was a very, very little kid. And so I don't view it as work. It's the most fun I've ever had in my life, especially just being around the people here. It's just such a special staff to me.
Don't undersell that.
Well, I've got a point on that too. Welcome back to Coffee and Cream. That's Damon Benning. I'm Ravi. Lulla. Want to remind you, Omaha Storm Chasers back in town on August 22nd against St. Paul. They're there from the 22nd to the end of the month. Make sure you get out there. Get some baseball in before you start getting your football fix in. Get over to Werner Park and see your Omaha Storm Chasers again back in town starting August 22nd.
So we talk a ton as an internal because we do so much culture, right? And I don't want to do a disservice to it because it's really kind of the backbone.
It's real. It's
of what we are. And I'm coming back from practice. I'm not going to embarrass him. But one of our coaches, he said, so a couple of days ago, I had so you have co-positions, right? And even though I, as a co-coordinator, I'm a defensive guy, you have a secondary position.
Sure.
So anyway, one of our offensive coaches was like, hey, can you take our older guys? We want to work pass pro, blitz pickup, this, that, and the other. I was like, okay, cool. So yesterday we flipped it around. He had the older guys they're working on their thing. I had the younger guys, and we were working on pass pro.
Mhm.
And he says, he said, hey, how did the young guys look in pass pro today? Because they're doing their thing,
Mhm.
right? So he wasn't down there. And I said, a ton better. I said, I was actually pleased.
Mhm.
He says, I appreciate your help. That's good looking out. And I said, no problem. I said, just tell me what to do and I'll do it. He said, I love it. I really think we have a special staff. In the off season, we talked about it. And I said this with one of the coaches at one of our rival schools.
Mhm.
Because we get along all the, we talk, we DM back and forth, we talk schemes, and we've had some, we're 1-1 against them in the last 2 finals, right?
Sure.
So, okay, and so we're just talking back and forth, and he loves his job.
Mhm.
And I said, isn't it interesting? This was like 4 months ago.
Mhm.
And I said, isn't it interesting when you have staffs that get along and enjoy working together,
Mhm.
how it manifests? It doesn't always mean you're going to be good, but the kids pick up on that. And that coincidentally is one of the things that I think makes that staff really, really good,
Mhm.
right? It's just, yeah, those guys know what they're doing, but you watch them on the sidelines, you watch them like they genuinely get along as a staff and they like one another. And I think it's been a long time. We don't have a defensive coordinator arguing with another coach or fight. Or we've heard, how many stories have we heard about Nebraska's staff? And I'm not saying they're not without strife, right?
Sure.
Because there is no gain without a little struggle.
Yeah.
But just genuinely getting along with one another,
Mhm.
where you don't have these blowups on the field. Now, Coach Rule may get in your butt, but it's not assistant coach on assistant coach crime. There's not, closed door. These three guys meet. They talk about this. Like, there is none of that. And I'm just telling you, there's something to be said for that as you're trying to continue to develop your culture. Don't undersell what Coach McGuire said, because he's not alone in that sentiment. Remember, Coach Satterfield said his very first day recruiting on the road, he'd been on the job 4 days.
Mhm.
He said he knew after they had their big win against Clemson and he saw Coach Rule calling,
Mhm.
he said all he could think of was how fast he needed to get to where he was going to ask him to be.
Yeah. I mean, that's a well, and
don't undersell that.
well, and kind of to your point about strife, like there's going to be disagreements, right?
Yeah.
Whether it happens publicly on the sideline or whether it happens behind closed doors, I don't know. We don't know how it's going to play out yet. But there will be disagreements. People will get after each other a little bit. But that's not when you say staffs get along or people get along, it's not that they avoid conflict.
Yeah.
It's that they can get through conflict because they have trust in each other, that they're both trying to achieve the same thing.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's the big difference between people that work together that trust each other and people that work together that don't. They're both going to have conflicts, but when you trust each other and you genuinely get along, you'll get through the conflict much quicker and with much more progress because you're both trying to get to the same place.
Yeah.
When you don't genuinely get along with the people you work with, you can never trust that you both have the same interest at heart.
100%.
And that becomes a huge issue.
And you
on a
receive
team.
praise and criticism
Totally
differently, knowing when you know somebody's riding with you.
Speaking of guys that are riding with us, let's get to the phone lines. We've got Cody wants to talk about high school football. What's up, Cody?
Commander Cody, what's up, buddy?
What's going on, gentlemen?
How are you?
It's game week.
Yes,
Get some
indeed.
football this week.
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
Hey, how would you like to be heading out west this week to North Platte when the forecast is 102 degrees?
Yeah, so that's
Correct.
coming this way, isn't it? Because I saw next week we're looking at 90s. We totally changed the way we practice and conditioning, trying to get ready for next week.
Yeah, I mean, even late this week and Saturday, high 90s.
Yeah, because they got the Titans, right? Papiola Vista South.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yep, they're heading out west, and I think Prep Bell West this Friday.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That one may get one may get out of hand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'll be. I don't know what all Prep's got coming. I mean,
They're young. They're young. I know a couple of their freshmen, and they're young, right? They lost a lot of good players up front, and Bellevue West is pretty oiled and polished.
Yeah. some questions. Seeing Neb Preps had their rankings come out. Were you a little bit shocked on where Millard North is at?
Yeah,
or is it about right where you thought?
I talked about it. It's funny. On my way out to Coach Mikey yesterday, I talked to Sauter. I was a little surprised about the rankings. No question.
Yeah.
It wasn't just a Millard North thing. Like if it were, and I could say, I mean, I'm not afraid. Like it's what it is. I would have went, and I think he's right there with me. I would have gone West Side, Bellevue West, Elkhorn South, Gretna, North, Millard North, or North, Millard North, or excuse me, West. Hang on. I made a mistake. I went West Side, Bellevue West, Elkhorn South, Millard South, Gretna, North, flip-flop North, Millard North, and then I probably would have made Kearney 7.
Yeah, that's right in line of where I was thinking. Flip-flop Millard South, Elkhorn South.
You like Millard South a little more than Elkhorn South? Those two teams are gonna be so good up front.
Mm-hmm.
And they play what, week 1, week 2?
I think it's 2, right?
I believe so.
Yeah.
I think that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I thought
the difference for me between those two. Go ahead, Cody.
Oh, I was saying I had Kearney up there too.
Yeah. So the difference between
with Chunky.
the difference for me between Elkhorn South and Millard South is quarterback play.
Yeah.
I gave the nod to Ronner over whomever starts
because we don't go with Kozak on. You don't.
Yeah, at Millard South, because I think that's still a relatively good two-way battle with going young and experienced versus experience. So I gave the nod to Ronner there with Elkhorn South.
Yeah, that's I was thinking right in same lines. I think Kearney is gonna be Kearney. Coach Cool's got a good thing out there.
Yeah.
I thought Grand Island is Grand Island. And then the other one I thought would probably be around 10 was Millard West.
Yeah, I'll be curious.
I mean, they got a lot of
They received votes. They received votes.
They were just that Q Street battle is going to be fantastic. Pacific Street should be a fantastic battle.
Cody,
yeah, I'm excited for it.
We appreciate you. We will be getting into more high school football as the week goes on and as the weeks go on for sure. Let's get to our guy, amazing Daniel. I know you wanted more time than this, Daniel, but we got a little less than a minute for you. What do you got?
Well, I don't think I can get it in a minute, but I've never called the show before. One big reason I got kind of a foul mouth, so I'll do my best to.
Let's keep it clean, buddy. Let's go.
Look, I got a little emotional at going to this parade this weekend. You're familiar with me. You might think that sometimes I try to make things a little bit about what they're not about just to make a point. That's probably fair, but I hope the positivity comes through here.
Yeah.
And I know everybody's just waiting for a 50-year-old white dude from the suburbs to weigh in, but we all know how segregated the city is and has been. And for Terrence Crawford's accomplishments and contributions to be so great that they essentially required the city and state leaders to come out and honor North Omaha, which is what this was really about. And that's what Bud made it about, to kind of officially recognize the importance and impact of Omaha's Black community in general, a community that's been very maligned through so much over time. It was just pure joy out there. And, to be part of it, I just felt fortunate to be part of it. I'm not pretending. This isn't about like we had a fun parade, so now there's harmony in the world. It's not that. It's just I never thought I'd see something like this in this city, and it's my favorite event I've ever been to here. Like I said, I was so fortunate to be there, and Bud was the impetus, obviously, but the community that he came up in and stayed involved with is what gave us this. So I think I just kind of want to thank North Omaha for giving us this and for lifting Bud up and embracing the rest of the city that has not always embraced them, to put it mildly. So
wow,
that's just kind of the short version of what I wanted to say. I wait with a little trepidation on your views on all that. So.
Man, D, I may have to call you back on that one.
That's fantastic.
That is fantastic. And
thank
you.
you.
A little more to say on that, so.
You got it.
We'll let you know.
Give you some runway.
We've got a little more time.
9:30.
Yeah, 9:30. We've got more coffee and cream coming up next.
Man.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
Welcome back to Coffee and Cream here on Hail Varsity Radio, AM 590 ESPN Omaha. We are joined now by our friend Scott Dochterman of The Athletic. Scott, how are you today?
Doc, what's up?
I'm doing great, guys. How you doing?
Good.
We're doing good, getting a little bit closer to football season, reading way too much into everything that happens at fall camp. I'm sure this is not strictly a Nebraska practice. What are some of the things that over in Iowa they are reading way too much into through a couple weeks of fall practice?
I guess, first of all, since we had our one and only glimpse into fall camp on Saturday, and Caden McNamara left the field with a tweak, probably more like a quad tweak. And, but he left the field for an hour. So the speculation began, and there was a lot of doomsdayers on Twitter or X or whatever you call it these days, thinking the season's already over. And, Brian needs to be fired for this, for letting him compete in a scrimmage. It was a non-contact fall down. So that would probably be number 1, 2, and 3. And then then of course it's why isn't Caleb Brown starting already since he transferred from Ohio State, even though he'll be in the rotation. So that's probably 1 and 2, I would say.
So Doc, this is interesting. I left Indy and I called back into our show just to kind of give a rundown. And I think the first time I felt like there were a couple of guys that had exceptionally good pressers that day. I felt Bielema was really good. And I thought Coach Ferentz, he joked a little. He was relaxed. He gave a little individual praise. It was almost like, and I think I said on social media, it's like he knows something we don't know. Don't you get the sense? We know they're going to be good defensively. Mm-hmm. He appears to really like this team, at least from what I can glean from his personality.
Yeah, he does. He likes it. He likes where it's positioned. And they made a lot of really good moves, and they were all under the radar because people look at it and say, it's just Iowa. They're going to be terrible on offense. But, it wasn't that long ago that they averaged 32 points a game either. And when you look at the team and what he likes about it, number one is the offensive line, which is his key spot. And really the guys who were sort of the glue last year. They were all sophomores. They all had their ups and downs and fought through it. They all got a lot better in the offseason. And then you throw on a couple of transfers who have a chance to start up front. You got a really solid tight end group with Eric All replacing Sam Laporta, which is about as close of an equal trade as you can get. And then Caden McNamara has kind of changed the dynamic of this offense because, I'm not saying that he's going to be an NFL quarterback or anything like that, but 2 years ago, he completed 64% of his passes. And last time Iowa had a quarterback who hit that number was Rick Stanzi back in 2010. So if he can hit somewhere near that, and with a kind of rebuilt wide receiver core, he thinks that this team could be, not only competing for the West title, but could go toe to toe with maybe the East champion, So I think he does secretly think this team's got a really good chance to do some good things. And based on what I saw on Saturday, I don't think he's totally wrong, even though the defense kind of dominated, which is par for the course. But I also saw some decent things, which is the offensive line actually blocking the defensive line, which didn't happen last year.
Scott, I'm curious about with Cade McNamara, because you kind of give us a little historical context with Stanzi there on the completion percentage. I guess, what does Cade McNamara need to be for this to be a, let's say, 9 or 10 win Iowa team instead of a 6 to 8 win Iowa team?
Yeah, I think it really just comes down to basically just completing passes that are the easy ones. That's been the struggle for Iowa in recent years. Spencer Petras, I think, will be an outstanding coach. He's as smart of a young man around the game as anybody there, but just not accurate enough. Missed a lot of the makeables, overthrew receivers on out routes, and things that Cade McNamara does really well. And I think that's really all they need to do: extend drives, 3rd and 4, hit the 6-yard, shallow cross, or just small details that I think this team really needs. And if the offensive line has made the strides that Kirk Ferentz thinks it has, which I think I would put it at a decent category. I'm not going to go far as good yet. I'm going to wait and see on that one. But if they could be at least decent, and the quarterback can make the makeables, and I think he can, then yeah, that's probably going to be the separator, because they've got a pretty decent schedule. They won 8 games last year with the worst offense in the last 25 years, at least in the Big Ten. So I think they've got the capabilities to kind of vault up that list and win some of the games that they lost that were fairly close last year.
Ominous foreshadowing, scary. I don't know. It just depends on kind of what happens when Nebraska meets Iowa. But I remember you telling me in the press box last year, if Iowa could just weather this offensive line storm, I'm summarizing, right? But they have a chance in the next couple of years to be pretty good again up front. Do you still share that sentiment? Because that could be a little scary if you're right.
I think they could be pretty good. I mean, I look at, I don't know that I see Tristan Wirfs necessarily, and he was blessed with God-given ability that nobody's ever really had. But I look at Mason Richmond, who's entering his 3rd year at left tackle. He started as a freshman, and he's going against Aiden Hutchinson and guys like that. Last year, he got better. This year, he looks like he's the part. Now, I don't think he's an NFL left tackle, but I think he's an NFL offensive lineman. Logan Jones from Council Bluffs flipped over last spring to play center, and all he's got in his ear is, hey, Tyler Linderbaum really got off the ball fast, and that's really what made him effective. So that's what he was trying to do, and he kept messing up the snap, last year. But he also squats 700 pounds, and I'm looking at him now going against some really good players in the interior at Iowa in practice, and yeah, he gets beat a few times, but he also holds his own a few times, which he couldn't do last year, and so I'm seeing growth. And I'm seeing, and really there's a parallel, because with Iowa, with Kirk Ferentz being there 25 years, you kind of look back at certain years. In 2007, it was really comparable to last year. They gave up 46 sacks. They had a quarterback complete 50%. They only went 6-6. And the next year, that line ended up blocking for Sean Green, who, was the Doak Walker Award winner. And they had guys like Brian Bulaga, who is really young, and then he becomes a first-round pick and plays in the NFL for 10 years. And they had 4 other draft picks on that offensive line. And I look at this unit, and I think they've got a chance to be like that. So that's really what I'm looking at with this line. I think if they can do that, if they can block well, they do have a really good young running back in Caleb Johnson. I think he can be as good as they've had in a long time, in a decade or plus. And so if they can just make strides up front, complete the makeable passes, I think this offense has a chance to get Brian out of the wilderness for his 25 points per game mandate.
Scott, I'm curious, and you brought up Caleb Johnson. If this offensive line does take the steps that you think they either have or will, what's the ceiling for Caleb Johnson, who physically has just about everything you could ask for in a running back?
Yeah, I think there aren't many limits to him. And when you look at what he's got, I mean, Iowa's had some pretty nice running backs over time, guys who, had a cup of coffee in the NFL, but haven't really had anybody like that since Sean Green in 08. And I think he's the closest thing to that. He's a little longer, a little angular, but incredible speed, size. I wouldn't put it on him to say he averages 120 yards plus per game. I mean, last year he set the freshman record at almost 800 yards and averaged 5.2 yards per carry for an offense average 2.9. So he's just got something to him that I think he can really take that next step. And even on Saturday, and again, it's a scrimmage, so you take it for what it's worth. But, going against a really good defense, he's making plays. He was beating defenders, both in space and then in running the football. So I there's a lot to like there. And I think if he stays healthy and this line takes a little bit of a step forward, yeah, I think he could be a 12 to 1,400 yard running back.
Crazy question, but I say this all the time with explosive quarterbacks that can run the ball. I always say explosive quarterbacks can make your offensive coordinators lazy, right? Because you figure at some point they'll bail you out, and maybe attention to detail and game plan can get away from you. How does Coach Woods, Coach Ferentz, how do you guys get away from not knowing you maybe have the best place-kicking punting combination in the conference and not falling subject to playing that way psychologically, knowing you have that in the bag?
Well, I think you look at Torrey Taylor and what he's been able to do for 3+ years now, and this will be year 4. And he is such a weapon that they do use that a lot. A lot of times there are the plus 50, when they're on the plus 50, that they'll play to that, because then you look at last year, I think he had 14 punts inside the 6-yard line and 2 directly led to safeties. And and when you've got a defense like Iowa's, that you could just kind of play this game of pong, if you will. And if the opponent can't get past its own 20, that you're constantly working from midfield. And now if you've got an offense that actually can do something with the ball, which did not happen last year, then maybe you could score. And then Drew Stevens missed only 2 field goals all year. I think they've got that is an area where they feel like they have an edge on everybody. And now that Drew Stevens is there, they've had some really good kickers over the last few years, Keith Duncan and Caleb Shudak being among them. But, Drew is in that category. So.
Scott Dochterman from The Athletic. Scott, we appreciate your time as always. I'm sure we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Doc.
All right. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
That's our friend Scott Dochterman from The Athletic. Coming up next, another friend, a friend-heavy show today.
Hello, friend.
Mike J. Schaefer from Husker 24/7. We'll also get to your Zipline 6-pack of questions, and we might hear a little bit more from Amazing Daniel if he's got time later. More on Coffee and Cream coming up next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes.
Appreciate it, guys. Thank Brian Edwards for me.
Here is Mike Schaefer. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds.
It's kind of challenging. It's kind
Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio, covering Nebraska football and recruiting for 24/7 sports. Here is Mike J. Schaefer.
Yeah, that's a grown-ass man right there.
Mike Schaefer.
I don't know. There could be bacon involved.
Mike Schaefer.
Appreciate it, guys. Thank Brian Edwards for me.
Here is Mike Schaefer.
it's kind of challenging. It's kind of the NFL style offense. You know, a lot of concepts, a lot of formations and terms. But one thing that helped me learn it was the whole coaching staff when they first got here. They started from ground zero, worked our way up throughout the playbook. So being able to go step by step throughout that playbook helps. The freshmen who came in the summer, it might be a little harder because they have to jump straight into it, but they're catching on pretty quick. So they're doing well with it.
Welcome back to Coffee and Cream, presented by Currency, or powered by Currency, excuse me. Powered by Currency here at the H&H Chevrolet studio. Damon, Benning, Ravi, Lulla, and joining us now, our guy Mike Schaefer from Husker 24/7. Schaefer, what's good this morning, buddy?
Not a lot. I don't know if you saw in the studio chat. I'm not sure what was going on with the bed music while I was hanging out, but that thing got up to 11.
It was aggressive.
Like
it was high. It was aggressive.
The 22% hearing I have left that's natural might be down under 20% at this point. So
you can't be
my lawyers might be reaching out.
Shane, you can't be taking my guy into the teens. What are we doing here?
What is going on?
My bad, Mike. I'm sorry.
Man.
I love you, man. I'm sorry.
Shane, I didn't catch that. Can you repeat it?
Unbelievable.
My bad. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Wow. Mike J, who stands to benefit from the
My
fresh?
hearing loss?
Who stands to benefit the most from the fresh set of eyes? Are you ready? Janarian Bonner, John Bullock, or Blaze Gunnerson? Who stands to gain the most from the fresh set of eyes?
So, I mean, it feels like if I was to put this in some sort of order, it would be John Bullock would be first because, there's a position change in there. He's obviously been noticed by the staff in a way that he hadn't been previously. So that's interesting. I think Blaze Gunnerson is among the most interesting guys on defense that really hasn't broken out.
Quietly, one of the best stories going.
Yeah.
It's almost like we didn't even give it a second thought that they're like penciling him in with the first unit.
The thing is, Blaze has to be healthy. I mean, I don't know that talent was ever that big of a question. He just hasn't had an extended run of health really since going to his sophomore year of high school. But I think from a talent perspective, everybody can kind of see it. It's just you got to be on the field to show it. And then Janira Bonner's last, not because there isn't a benefit or having a new set of eyes on him, but it's just that he was in the program the least amount of time of this group. And obviously there's a little bit of a position change, and we'll see kind of what his actual role is as the season goes. But of those three guys, you'd hear the least. So I feel like it's least helpful for him.
Schaefer, I'm curious, kind of going off of Damon's question there.
Don't do that.
Yeah, I'm just going to steal from you a little bit because your ideas are better than mine sometimes.
Petty theft. That's what they call that, petty theft.
Who benefits the most? And I'm not going to give you options because I'm not as
okay, I like that.
Who benefits the most from a so-called positionless offense, the way that Satterfield and McGuire have been talking about?
I'm in the offensive coordinator because you can sort of change any answer to fit the question. You don't really have to say anything. I'm loving it. This is what I've moved to Tuesdays in the last couple of weeks. I've just been like, man, Marcus Satterfield's really just throwing it out there. He's not trying to say coach speak. He's just giving you straight out of the playbook coach speak. But no, an actual answer for you. It's tough because without knowing what this offense is doing and setting out to accomplish and not putting all of my eggs in the social media released highlight basket, it's tough to say who's going to be able to benefit the most, because you can see a way where a guy like Thomas Fedoni can help this team, both as an inline tight end, but also split out a little bit. You can utilize him in that fashion. Ramir Johnson, we spent all of last season hearing about how he could be utilized in a variety of ways, and then he was just left on the sidelines the entire time. But if this staff can find ways to use him as a slot, wide receiver at times, or putting him in motion and confusing the defense a little bit. Like I think there's stuff in there without seeing the actual offense go to work yet or what their vision of it is. It feels like I'm just sort of throwing some darts out there. But they definitely have intriguing pieces on offense. It's just a matter of what does this look like when it comes together, and what are their actual goals as they're trying to move forward offensively too.
I apologize if this is a loaded question, because I feel like you and I are in the exact same camp here with Gabe Ervin, where it's like I
gotta see it.
I get the buzz, but I'm like, for you, who ends? They're all gonna carry it. Who do you think emerges as the guy like, oh, that's different than what I thought I was going to see? Let me ask it that way. Who's going to be the most different from what we think we're going to see?
I don't know that this is a super confident answer, but I guess I sort of hope that it's Anthony Grant. Like I hope that there is an evolution or development in his game over the off season. I've heard that EJ Barthel is happier with what he's seen from Grant, through the course of the end of the spring and the summer. I wouldn't be surprised if he's made kind of a move relative to how people sort of feel like it's Gabe Ervin's job at the moment. I think he's the most natural runner in some ways of this group, or I don't even know if natural is the right word. But I just think Anthony Grant has the most upside. Let's put it that way. I think he has the most upside of any of those running backs. And so I guess I would hope, we'll go back to the fresh eyes thing. Maybe there's something EJ Barthel can unlock in Anthony Grant that makes him better than what we saw at his best last year, which good, but there's certain things that he could get better at in terms of patience and finding the hole and getting the shoulders square and all of those different things. So maybe we see that here in 23, because I do think there's a better running back than the version we saw in 22, which was, again, Nebraska's leading rusher.
How much of the offensive line looking better is just simply running backs knowing what holes to hit? Like
they work in tandem.
Do you think it like that? Do you?
Yeah, absolutely. They work in tandem. I mean, okay, so I'm going back 2 seasons now, but go to 2021. Nebraska's offensive line looked better immediately when Ramir Johnson was the one hitting the holes on the inside zone runs, because he hits them harder and he finds them a little bit better than what Gabe Ervin or Marquise Stepp were doing at that time. So I think part of the offensive line for me, I don't, the run blocking aspect of it, you'd like to see them get a better push, but also it's just you want to see better results out of the running back. So it's a tandem thing. Like if they're doing their job and the running backs are doing their job, Nebraska's offensive line should look better because of it. Now, that sets aside the whole issues they had with pass protection last year. But if we're just talking strictly running the football, running backs that have a better understanding of where they need to go or showing more patience for the hole to develop can help with the offensive line as a whole and make you feel better about the offensive line as a whole.
Schaefer, I found a better way to ask the question that I wanted you to answer earlier, so we're going to try again.
If at first you don't succeed,
I'm
hit the rest of that 20%.
I'm stubborn.
We got 20 minutes here, so you do what you want.
I'm stubborn, and we have a long segment, so we're going to try again. What players on offense do you think have the most versatile skill set?
Okay.
I think that's what I was trying to ask earlier.
It goes back to, I think Ramir Johnson again can do some interesting things. I think you can use him in different ways than what we've seen in his career at times. I mean, I go back to that Michigan game, and I will go back to that Michigan game until forever, I think. I mean, that's a 2021 college football playoff team, and you could make a case at times on offense the best player for Nebraska in that game was Ramir Johnson, because they utilized him out of the backfield as a receiver. They got him in interesting matchups. I think they actually hit on a successful screen or a swing pass. I forget which. I mean, they had that outstanding, I think it was a wheel route, because that's the route that everybody knows, out of the backfield early in that game. So there's the way that Ramir Johnson was used in that Michigan game. Like, I crave that. Like, use players in that fashion when they show you that ability. And especially, I mean, he's fast enough, and this is bringing up a bad memory for some, but go back to that Illinois game. If he catches that pass from Casey Thompson, 1, you probably don't lose Casey Thompson for several weeks. 2, your chances of beating Illinois go up. Do you guys remember the play that I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah.
Out of the backfield, it's a pass along the
sidelines.
I believe the Nebraska sideline.
Because I think a play or two later, Nebraska turned it over.
Well, yeah, because Casey gets crushed and the ball flies in the air and it gets picked off, and that's pretty much the end of the game. But it's not, we didn't see that a lot last year, but I think that can be part of his skill set. And so that's a guy I'd like to see utilized in that way. If you're going to go really young, and I don't know what you're going to get out of some of these players, but, Jaden Doss, when he was being recruited, talked about how teams were telling him that they were getting Deebo Samuel vibes of how he could run the football, his vision when he had the football in his hands.
Don't tease me, Schaefer. Don't tease me with Deebo.
I know. It's kind of one of those comparisons that gets thrown out there, and you're like, I don't know if this is 2% or 98% accurate, but one of those things. But he is a guy that has experience running the ball out of the backfield. He played running back at times for Ray Moore Peculiar. So I look at him as another guy with an interesting skill set. I mentioned Fedoni. I mean, you have Janiron Bonner, who's a wide receiver now at H-back. Like there's different things that they can do. And I am curious if they get to the point where part of what the offense is designing mismatches against different linebackers or safeties with some of the speed Nebraska can get on the field. Like I think that's going to be a part of it. But they obviously have to get other things to work before you can get to the more of the gadget stuff.
I just think I just go back to the spring game where they actually gave the ball to Bonner on like a fullback dive.
Mm-hmm.
First play of the game.
It's like, what is going on? Mike J., when you're listening to like Coach Rule and this staff, am I overselling the fact that it just it feels different, that they actually enjoy working with one another, with all the guys with the paid positions, a lot more than some previous staffs have? Is it just me, or do they seem more connected?
Well, I mean, they're connected by Rule, right? Like they all sort of have this connection back to Rule. I mean, Rob Dvorak played for him, and Philip Simpson played for him, and those guys have different roles on the staff, but they know Matt Rule through that. And so knowing Matt Rule through that gives you an instant connection, whether they crossed over at Temple or not. And then you have Garrett McGuire, who obviously has deep connections into it, and Marcus Satterfield, and all of these guys are just connected. Like, I think that's a big part of it. I think that's a big part of the recruiting pitch, and that's more of what I can actually speak to, is these recruits get in there, and Matt Rule talks about family, and he talks about how, when he puts a staff together, he's not out there looking for the guy that's going to be on everyone's hot list for best linebackers coach. He's looking for a guy who knows how he wants things run and understands what Matt Rule's system is. And, that's generally why I think you're going to see internal promotions. The next opportunity that you have, obviously Bob Wager, that just happened, but the next opportunity that you have, and that was an internal one, though that had as much to do with timing. I think Philip Simpson's going to end up as a full-time assistant coach. If Terrence Knighton has NFL opportunities, which wouldn't surprise me, then it's going to be the next guy up. And they have people like that at all of these different positions.
Adam
That's just how Matt Rule does it.
They do.
Yeah.
They have a lot of those guys.
Well, and I think if you look at how Matt Rule does it a lot, he wants them to start in the recruiting department, learn what his recruiting process is, get a feel for the evaluation and what it is like to be on that end of it, and then you move into everything else. It's almost like an assembly line for assistant coaches if you look at his stops throughout his career and how he's sort of done these things.
Schaefer, I'm curious. I was listening to Rule talk the other day, and he's talking about taking him to go see Hamilton. He's talking about like having him watch Bud Crawford, and he says that we just want to be around excellence. We just want to be around excellence, whatever it looks like. And I'm curious. I like that. Sounds good, right? I like how that sounds in theory. I guess my question is, and maybe this isn't a fair question, but how much of that can actually translate? How much of that actually matters, or just like, we just want to go see Hamilton?
I think team activity obviously is good. The way that you sort of phrased it with both Hamilton and Crawford, I guess I kind of think about it in the sense of like, if you're going to have a team activity and you're going to watch something, watching two of the best at what they do sort of stands out in terms of you can watch Hamilton and come away with just complete, and just being completely impressed by the technical regard of everything they have to do. And it's not football, but the choreography, like everything has to be hit for this to look like a success. If you think of Hamilton as a musical and Nebraska running the football in the same way, the choreography in the background has to work to enhance everything in front of it. The choreography of your offensive line has to enhance what's happening with your running backs, what's happening with the overall play call. So I guess if you're really looking to deep dive on it, showing really successful things to a team atmosphere and kind of ingraining in their brain, like, we're going out, we're doing this, we're doing it as a team, but we're also watching things that are really successful. Bud Crawford, another example. Like I think it almost doubly reinforces how you have to do these things. Now, that might be going a little bit deep. It might just be hey, we need a team activity. We're all stuck here in the dorms. But I think there might be something to that idea.
Schaefer, given what you know and kind of what you're learning since December with this staff and the culture, would you rather be an old guy resetting or a young guy having to get ramped up to speed?
I don't know. I think they both have their own benefits, right? Like if you're an older player, one of the things that happens with a coaching transition that always fascinates me, and I can't speak to it, but if you're a guy and you're Luke Reimer and you had Barrett Ruud for the entire duration of your career at Nebraska, and now you have Rob Dvorak, is there a benefit that you get from we talk about fresh eyes, but is there a benefit you get from a fresh voice, from a fresh perspective? Because I think with some of these guys, especially some of these defenders, I look at the defensive line. Ty Robinson probably needed Terrence Knight. Ty Robinson probably wasn't going to get any better doing the same things under Mike Dawson for a third year. So I look at that and I see an enhanced benefit in it. And then I look at some of the younger guys and I see an opportunity for them to learn very early on what the standard is, what the expectation is, where the goal is, and then work towards it. So I think there's benefits to both, and I'm going to take a very fence-sitting answer and answer it that way.
But it's interesting you use both those guys because I think, and I don't know the conversation, I just remember the day, and I said this one time on the show a couple months ago, where I remember Ty Robinson spending a lot of time sitting with Coach Rule outside the stadium in front of the statue. I was doing some other business. I kind of walked by him, and I bet I was in there, at least an hour. And I came back and they were still sitting, and it wasn't warm outside either. So that let me know that they were in depth about something. And it's funny you use Reimer because I think it took some time to make sure that Reimer, all in maybe isn't the word, but for a likable coach like Ruud that coached the way that he did, and you've had some success when you were healthy, I think that relationship with Dvorak probably took some time, right? I think the staff had to kind of wait that out to see where guys like Reimer were.
Yeah, but I think if you're Luke Reimer and you can approach it like, okay, I have this as a base, and I learned this from a former NFL player, but here's someone else, and he can provide something else. I don't know what player said it. It was somebody in the spring sort of talked about how he's figured out, because he's had so many different position coaches, to sort of use the best of all of them. It might have been Nash Hutmacher talking about Tony Tuioti and then Mike Dawson and now Terrence Knighton, and how he's able to sort of utilize different things from each of them. And so I just think there's sometimes a benefit from either side of it. But yeah, some of it has to be just how quickly can you develop that relationship with a new coach? And especially if you had a strong relationship with the old coach. But I do think there can absolutely be a benefit. It doesn't have to just be all right, this guy's a veteran, I can just give him the talking points and we can move forward. I think there's definitely ways to learn from each other.
Schaefer, I'm curious. I want to kind of talk about Ethan Piper here for a second.
Oh, talk about benefiting from
new eyes.
Not having new eyes.
Right.
The consistency.
I'm curious because Ethan Piper seems to be sort of one of the poster children for the ideals of what the new staff is preaching, right? And he seems to be the embodiment of a lot of these things. Certainly the most prominent on the offensive line being, an honorary single number guy, being at media days, things like that. My question is sort of more generally, how do you balance a guy that's kind of right on that fringe of starting, I think, versus a guy who very clearly is the epitome of what you want your football team to represent? I guess how much of a nudge does that give him in your mind in terms of actually playing and getting on the field and those sorts of things? Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, it does. I think it matters to a degree. I mean, obviously, if Ethan Piper is consistent day in and day out, and the version of him that you're going to get when you put him on the football field, that makes it easier to play him in some regard. So, if it's an Ethan Piper or Henry Lutovsky conversation, then I think it comes down to, if you're getting the consistency out of Ethan Piper, you're going to probably reward him with that playing time. So I also, I don't know that there's going to be a rotation, but I don't think it'll be just 5 offensive linemen to start the year and only 5 offensive linemen. Like I could see guys having an opportunity to work in and out. And I could see if you have an Ethan Piper and, he maybe starts for you, but then there's a series or two where you're trying to work somebody else in or whatever it is. I think there's ways that he can be good depth. I do feel like he has emerged as a leader for that offensive line, as a vocal leader, maybe just for the culture of Matt Rule. I mean, that was something that happened in the spring. He's one of the first guys to talk. And he's sort of interesting, right? Like, he grew up a Nebraska fan. He committed to Scott Frost and that staff. He desperately wants this place to be successful. And he talked about how dead inside he basically felt last year, walking through the hallways, knowing where this program had kind of fallen and knowing that he was part of it. And so I think having him as kind of a vocal, emotional leader isn't the worst thing in the world. And he's going to represent you really well. So I think there's ways that you can utilize him on the field. But if Henry Lutovsky makes a big jump, or whoever, I'm just using that as an example, it's not going to necessarily keep him on the field, but he can still provide a lot of value for you in your locker room too.
A leader.
Yeah, him. Hey, Schaefer, we're safe to say you're at Bellevue West Friday night?
I will not be able to make it on Friday night because I did not consult week 0 before I scheduled another obligation. However, we will have Husker 24/7 at the game. So, we'll be covered. I will see Bellevue West for the first time that I see Omaha West Side, because I made the decision I will not be going to Colorado. I will be going to that game instead on Friday night.
All right, we'll see you on September 9th.
There we go. Schaefer, we appreciate it, bud.
All right, thanks for having me on, guys. Have a good one.
Mike J.
That's our friend Mike J. Schaefer from Husker 24/7. We got more stuff. We'll get to
stuff
everything.
And things and stuff.
All sorts of ish coming up next here on Coffee and Cream.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 5 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes.
Oh, yeah, I think all of them are very athletic. You know, I think they all have
Rodgers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes.
a little bit of everything. You know, this offense, Coach G talks about, it's a positionless offense. So, you know, I like to make sure I'm learning concepts and
Rodgers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rodgers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rodgers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
a little bit of everything. You know, this offense, Coach G talks about, it's a positionless offense. So, you know, I like to make sure I'm learning concepts and learning really what everybody's job is. And so I've been kind of put in different places all over the field.
Welcome back to Coffee and Cream on Hail Varsity Radio, AM 590 ESPN Omaha. We are on KFOR in Lincoln as well. My guy Damon Benning here with me.
What's up?
Ravi Lulla here. Shane Schillerberg doing his thing as well. And we're brought to you by Dingman's Collision Center. Ding! They've got a great give back program for every car repair. You can go check out more information on that give back program at dingmans.com/r-community. Been in business for over 25 years. They can work on any make and model of car because they got the latest technology. 4 locations throughout the metro, including a standalone mechanical shop at 120th and Maple.
That's my spot.
120th and Maple?
Yeah. I've been there twice. I took Caleb's car there as well. But my original, the OG, was the one off of Saddle Creek.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. It's right. It's a very tricky little intersection.
Right there.
It's kind of like a diagonal. It's like a smushed X. It's like a diagonal 4-way.
Oh yeah.
Oh, that's
a one of the goofiest interchanges in Omaha.
It really is.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah,
I don't even know. Like whoever was putting that together was on one that day.
It's almost like there was a vertical X and they just decided to smush it.
Yeah, it's like somebody was like one of the civil planning engineers was like lost a bet or something.
Is it kind of like a Weapon X?
He's kind of like a Weapon X hybrid type of a guy.
Is it kind of a hybrid type of a corner?
This dude. You've been sitting on that?
What are we doing? What are we doing over there?
I have no idea.
Wow. What we're doing.
Not bad though, Shay. No, you're good, Coach.
What we're doing over here is checking out the AP poll that came out yesterday.
Is it really hard to hear in here? Or is it just me?
See, that's where everybody.
So
That's
don't
where
make fun of
everybody.
me.
That's where everybody got it from.
They did, yeah. It's a rule thing that he's. I don't know what his deal is.
It's just
I'll back away. I'll back away.
It's
now.
it's Meg shift.
Yeah, I guess.
And
I guess.
like they'll just wait a little while. Like you'll have plush media availability
stuff
when they get to the new digs.
Yeah, I think that's right. Well, you just gotta hold out till you get there.
Everybody sounds the same. It's fine.
I don't notice. I think it sounds fine.
No, I'm talking about the answers.
Oh, well, yeah.
I mean, unless it's Coach Rule.
Well, we get a lot of that,
Someone has a phone call here.
common language talking about everybody on the same page. I'm just going to keep talking while I'm playing these drops. I'm just going to power through.
I'm team common language.
So I actually had a question about this because we were talking a little bit about it. Well, I don't know. At some point, it's hard to keep track of our conversations.
So now it's like I'm not even sure if it's on air.
I know that's the problem
because we talk about a lot, over the.
Yeah, just whether it's the podcast, whether it's on the show.
Now that you're hitting me on email.
Well, I just wanted you to have like the.
No, I got you. Listen, I appreciate
the notes,
and
right?
it's on my phone too.
Yeah, so like I'm usually if I'm on my phone writing notes, then I usually do it in an email.
Yeah,
and then it's easier to just send that to you than to like copy and paste it into a text.
So currently, my email sitch. I told Sasha I was going to clean it up.
Oh no, how many do you have?
2,400.
That's a lot, my guy.
Yeah.
So if I ever email you something, I need to text you and tell you I emailed it to you.
Well, on my Gmail, I'm at 84% capacity.
That's high.
Yeah, I'm going to delete 8,000 emails.
You're allowed a lot of emails on Gmail before you hit capacity.
You know what? Like, maybe I just need to mix in and unsubscribe.
Oh, you got for sure. And they kind of help you out there now. They kind of give you like suggestions. If it's like, hey, you haven't opened an email from this person in a while, would you like to unsubscribe?
Listen to this guy.
They do.
Okay.
It's helpful.
I'm going to get on it.
I've unsubscribed a bunch of stuff because I'm always trying to get like 10% off or whatever when I'm going to a website. So I end up subscribed to a lot of stuff.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
No, I had a real.
I'm not offended.
I had a real football question for you. Well, at least a real common language question for you. So we were talking about how it can be used for accountability. That kind of seems like one of the main purposes of it, right? We talked about how it can be used for edification, right? Like building people up. I was thinking last night, though, or maybe a couple nights ago. I don't know what day it is. I was thinking a couple nights ago about setting expectations and how useful common language can be in expectation setting, right? Because here's an example. When I first started playing college basketball, somebody was using the term, hey, I want you to show on that ball screen, right? I was coming from a place where it was called something else, right? So in my mind, when they say show, that meant one thing to me. Maybe stand back a little bit, like cover them, but not go all the way out like an ice or a hard hedge, which is what I was used to calling it. When they said show, they wanted an ice. So I'm thinking they say show. I'm thinking drop back.
They want you to ice a ball screen.
And it took probably 2 weeks before like they could like, hey, you need to show on that. You need to show on that. I was like, I am showing on that. What are you asking me to do here?
I'm here.
And finally they go, I'm like, hey, what do you mean when you say show? And they're like, I want you to do this. And I was like, we used to call that ice. That's where the problem was, right?
Okay. Yep. 100%.
How useful is that? Like, obviously, you're coaching high school kids. You've got the background. How useful is it just so everyone is on the same page? Because I feel like if it happened to me, it can't be totally foreign. It can't be a totally alien experience when you're getting into a new system where it's like, oh, we used to call it this. I had no idea what you were asking me to do.
Yeah. So it's funny you bring this up just because I keep this as a refresher for the season because I always like to go back and see if we're hitting on goals. So this is a staff meeting on 4/24. It's way back in April.
Yep.
Okay. It's still high school. It's way back in April. Right. This was like our second staff meeting. What's number 1 say when you read it?
Own the culture, coach in a way that fits the culture.
What's number 2 say?
Common language.
What's number 3 say?
BCEs.
Blaming, complaining, explaining.
Not
right?
before Common Era. We're not.
So those 3 things, right?
Yeah.
Are things that we always have to be doing.
Yeah.
Why? Because it's what you said. We spent 45 minutes flushing out a term we'd like to use, a term we don't like to use. If we're going to say this, we actually better do it. So the position group guys got to talk about what their verbiage means, and how everybody has to use the same verbiage. Why? They wanted consistency with the kids because they felt like if people use the same verbiage, and if I say, hey, strike, and somebody else says shoot your hands or whatever it is, right? Like show versus ice. At that age, like you get so many different people, and we try to get multiple people ready to play, right? We don't have we're gonna play a lot of guys. And so that was really, really important for him to go over early. And I can't tell you how many times we would sit and there would be a pause, and I would say, well, I don't call it that. Like I call it this, right? Where weak side, strong side versus closed or open, or they mean the same thing, but what are we gonna say? Are we gonna say, is it strong, weak? So those things matter because what happens is it helps with retention.
Yeah.
It's just really, really repetitive.
Well, and not just with retention, but it eliminates ambiguity, right?
That's probably first and foremost.
That's to me why it's most important, right? Because if everybody is talking about the same thing and using the same language to talk about it, then there is zero room for interpretation.
So you know what happens once it starts to get, you can use shorthand.
Yes. Yeah.
So that's, because staffs are different, right? Some staffs coach on the fly. Some guys wait till you get in the film room. And so everybody has to be on the same page with that. And our coach is still a little, I wouldn't say controlling, but like he'll say, hey, listen, we'll correct later. Or, hey, take your time. This is a correction teaching period. We may not get through everything. So even just saying that, let you know. And I think it's interesting because I watch these guys on more than a few occasions now. Like they'll stop practice to teach.
Yeah.
Some staffs that would drive crazy.
Sure.
Others, that's the way that they do business. I think with this young team, being able to use common language like that, it just helps further set the culture, right? Because you have to get it right because you have so many new guys.
Yeah.
Maybe next year.
Well, even the old guys are new, right?
Yeah.
I mean, really.
Maybe next year it'll be different. Maybe this will always be a teaching developmental staff.
Yeah.
But ever since they started calling themselves, hey, we're a developmental program,
they've been about it.
They speak it into existence.
All right. We've got the Sports Six Pack coming up next on Coffee and Cream.
Be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Time now. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio. Time now for the Sports Six-Pack on Coffee and Cream with Andrew Rogers and Damon Benning. Presented by Zipline Brewing Company, makers of Dear Old Nebraska Brew, the official beer of Nebraska alumni.
Welcome back to Coffee and Cream. That can mean only one thing. That noise you hear, it is time for the Zipline Sports Six-Pack. Of course, you've got that Dear Old Nebraska brew, perfect for tailgating, clean, crisp, and easy to drink. You know I like it when it's easy to drink. That's my go-to if I'm going for a beer. I need an easy drinker. I'm not one of those guys that wants my beer to taste like a meal. I want it to be easy to drink. I like those summer beers all year round.
And you want your 8 hours of beer drinking like this weekend.
Oh, I didn't do any beers this weekend.
No.
If I'm drinking for like an extended period of time,
8 hours is a long time.
It was, yeah. I don't do beers though because I fill up too much. So I was doing some other stuff, but if I'm just having a nice casual, I'm hitting my Zipline Dear Old Nebraska.
So you
brew.
like for your beer to be a little more golden than dark?
Yeah. I'm kind of a.
So you'd love their ale, their Nebraska ale.
Oh yeah. It's right up my alley.
Because did I tell you the funny story when we went to a place in Lincoln? It was Hopcat, and it was after state basketball, and one of the guys that I was with, he coaches youth anyway. He wanted I went to go order for him, and he wanted a Bud Light, and the guy didn't even say anything, and he gave me a beer.
Yeah.
And I took it back to the table to him, and he loved it, right? And when he went back to go get his own, he's like, they don't have Bud Light, and he asked the guy what it was, and it was
Dear Old Nebraska brew.
Nebraska U.
It's
so it has to be kind of light.
Yeah, it's a lighter. It's an easy drinker.
What'd you say when you went back to the table? Well, how about a beer?
Yeah, I want Brent Musburger. How about a beer?
All right, Shano, let's get started.
Question number 1.
You know, I miss Cam and Sasha reading these because all I had to do
I
was
listened
drink.
to her last week. Did you like having Sasha as your security?
Yeah,
blanket?
it was good.
She's
Good.
like your Linus blue blanket.
It's like my emotional support water bottle.
We got to
here.
let Shane get out more.
We do.
He said no.
All right, Shane, what do we got?
If you had to place a bet on summer league or NFL preseason, which would you choose?
So we were talking yesterday. That's pure degenerate zone right there. NBA Summer League or NFL preseason.
NFL preseason.
Yeah, me too. I think there's like a slightly more predictability to NFL preseason.
Not ever doing either, but
I wouldn't either. But
If I had to choose,
I'm going NFL preseason.
Finger, fake gun to head, NFL preseason.
All right, Shane, what's next?
Question number 2.
All right, if you could pick just one transfer quarterback from the Big Ten West for your team, which would you choose?
So of all the guys, all the transfer quarterbacks that are slated to start in the Big Ten West this year, who are you thinking?
I would probably take so this isn't offense specific.
Nope,
right?
this is just
don't overthink it.
Yep.
I'll take Hudson Card.
Oh, interesting. I think I might go McNamara. He seems like kind of the safe pick.
Gosh, should either of us should we pick Sims?
Well, Sims is if you're doing a very specific kind of offense, I think. But I think McNamara is the safe answer. I think Card is probably the next safest. I think there's a lot of variance potential with Sims. Even if you like him, I think there's some variance potential there.
May get the most upside.
Oh, for sure. I think high ceiling, but maybe a little bit lower floor.
Gotcha. I'll take Card.
All right.
Question number 3.
That's a tough one.
If I could guarantee you quality play on the offensive line or the defensive line, what would you choose?
So we're talking like a solid B, I think. Not world beaters, but like very solid. It's a tough question for me because I think you're dealing with, okay, if your offensive line is solid, you're assuming maybe that helps Jeff Sims, maybe that helps the running game. But
I'm going to go D-line.
See, I do too.
I'm going to go D-line.
Because if they give me a good D-line, I feel really good about the defense.
Yeah.
And I'll take the whole unit being solid.
Yeah, I'll go D-line. Again, another tough one.
Well, I'm trying to make the brain, kind of get cranking this morning.
Man, D-line by a hair.
I think so too.
You guys can pick D-line all you want. I'm picking zip line.
Question number 4.
What a company, man.
If you could pick one team from outside the top 10 to make the college football playoff, who would it be?
So we had our AP poll come out yesterday, and DB and I were talking a little bit off air about maybe some of the teams we like outside that top 10. 17 of the last 20 national champions have been from that top 10. Most recent outside was 2013 Florida State when Jameis Winston came on the scene.
Yeah, and your lowly boohoo Alabama Crimson Tide came in at 4.
Lowest ranking since 2009.
Isn't that wild?
It's crazy.
I mean, it's 14 years.
That's a long time. But
and they're 4th.
But think about this. Florida State had a run of 14 straight years where they finished in the top 4.
Oh, I know.
Isn't that like unreal to think about?
That's silly.
That's crazy.
That's Bobby Bowden.
That's good stuff right there.
That's Mickey Andrews.
It is Mickey Andrews. People forget about Mickey Andrews.
Yeah. Great interview.
So we've got some of the candidates: Texas, Tennessee, Notre Dame, Utah, Oregon, Kansas State, TCU, Oregon State, Wisconsin, Oklahoma. Any of those jumping out to you? You got your Tulane down at 24.
Tulane's got a chance to run the table.
But even if they run the table, they're probably not making that playoff. The schedule's not strong enough, right?
It's not that. So that Ole Miss, and I remember talking to Brian Edwards about this. That Ole Miss Tulane in week 2, and Ole Miss, that's on the road, I think, for the Rebels. I have to go back and look.
I think you're right.
I think that's at Tulane.
But Ole Miss would have to end up being awesome, and Tulane would have to smoke them for that to carry them into the playoff.
Yeah. Do I have a Katy Perry dark horse?
What, you felt like you smoked it?
You want mine?
Yeah.
I think I'm going Utah.
See, Cam Rising may not start out healthy, though.
I understand that, but I love Kyle Whittingham, and he's telling me that this is the best team he's ever had.
Yeah, I'm going with Notre Dame.
You kind of like Notre Dame this year.
do. It was between Notre Dame and K-State.
You like, is it the Sam Hartman deal? Is it Marcus Freeman?
It's Freeman. They've recruited well. I think Hartman will help them, and defensively, they got a couple thoroughbreds.
They do. They certainly do.
And they'll be a little bit more dynamic on offense, where they don't just have to run the ball and hope for the best. I like Notre Dame.
The QB play last year was low key really bad.
Yeah.
And they were still
starters. Yeah,
pretty solid as a football team.
Give me the Domers.
Okay. What's next?
If Cam Rising was healthy, I'm with you.
Yeah, I like Utah a lot.
Question number 5.
You are starting a franchise with a quarterback in the NFL. Only Patrick Mahomes is not available. Who are you going with?
Gee, Merry Christmas.
Are these too hard for the 6-pack today? Are these more hard alcohol drinks that we're going instead of these aren't soft drinks?
I
have my guy.
Not named Mahomes.
Anybody but Mahomes is on the table. We're doing an expansion draft. Only Mahomes was predicted at quarterback, inexplicably.
So I'm basically talking that Burrow, Lawrence,
Allen, if you're into it.
I don't want Josh Allen.
Herbert, if you're into it.
Don't want Herbert.
Maybe Lamar, if you're into it.
Don't want Lammer.
Brock Purdy, if you're smart. No, I'm just kidding.
Give me Trevor Lawrence.
See, I was down to Burrow and Lawrence, and I think I landed on Burrow.
I
can't fault you for Lawrence.
I'm definitely not going to fight you over that.
Yeah, I'm not either. Those were my two guys. We're Lawrence and Burrow.
But I'll take Lawrence.
I'm all in on Lawrence, I think.
But man, how average does Cincy seem in your head without?
That's
Burrow?
why I can't get over Burrow.
And I know Chase is spectacular,
but I'm obsessed with that dude. Burrow's like everywhere
he's such a winner.
Yes, he's everywhere he goes, he wins.
I could talk myself into Burrow because I love him. Yeah, I'll go with Lawrence, even though I think Jayville may be a little overvalued right now.
Last one, Shane.
Question number 6.
Who do you think ends up leading Nebraska in rushing this year?
Oh, Lord have mercy.
So we got the running backs. We got Grant. We got Irvin. Maybe, I don't know, I'm going to throw Ramir Johnson in there. Emmett Johnson got a shout out the other day.
Especially on special teams. He was a throw-in, too. I'll take Grant.
I'm going to go wild card on you here. I'm going Jeff Sims.
He's never rushed for more than like 470 yards.
I think they're going to use a lot of QB run.
I don't know if it'll be him, though.
I think some of it'll be him.
Yeah.
And I think they might be distributing the rest of the carries too evenly to, like, you might have, could I sell you on like 3 guys rushing for 450 yards?
That'd be awesome.
Like, with that, you could see maybe that though.
Yeah. Give me Grant though.
All right.
I actually feel kind of good about that.
That's our Zipline Sports 6-pack brought to you by dear old Nebraska Brew. That's all for today. We are out of time.
Bless the Union of Souls.
I think Andrew Rogers is back in this chair tomorrow.
Who knows?
I don't know. We'll see. Damon Benning will be back. Shane Schilberg never leaves. This has been another edition of Coffee and Cream here on Hail Varsity Radio. We'll see you tomorrow.